At the Grand Gala, celebrating the company's 60th anniversary, just as I, the CEO, was about to step on stage to speak, my son grabbed a microphone and said, "You don't deserve that chairman's seat anymore because of the sins buried in your past." 380 guests froze as they looked up at the massive screen. A video started playing every detail of what happened years ago, the truth I thought I had buried for life. My son smiled like he had already won, until an old man stepped forward holding a USB drive, and then everything no one expected began to unfold. Before we begin, take a moment to drop a comment and tell me, is it morning, afternoon, or late night? Where you are right now, I read every single comment, and your presence here truly means something. A quick note. Some details in this story are fictionalized to highlight the deeper lesson. What matters most is the message it carries. On the night of November 1st, 2025, at 9:30 p.m., my 29-year-old eldest son destroyed me in front of 380 people. I am Theodore Prescott, 56 years old, CEO of Prescott Holdings, worth $2.4 billion. I was standing at Table 1 in the Plaza Hotel Grand Ballroom, receiving the Industry Leader of the Year award when Sterling stood up. Sterling Prescott, my eldest son, wore a Tom Ford tuxedo and held a wireless microphone with the expression of a man about to commit patricide. My mother, Constance, 81 years old, in a cream Chanel suit and an 8-carat diamond ring, sat across from me, the Iron Lady who had ruled our family for 6 decades. Celeste, my wife of 30 years, sat beside me in a $14,000 emerald Cartier gown. Her hands trembled around a Bordeaux glass. Clarence Garrett, 71, and chairman of the board for 40 years, had just finished introducing me when Sterling's voice boomed through the ballroom speakers. "Before my father receives this award, there's something our whole family needs to know," Sterling said. His voice was calm, too calm. "And everyone here should know too, because transparency is Prescott's #1 value." I couldn't move. My legs had turned to concrete. "Sterling," my mother hissed. "Sit down now." He didn't sit. He opened his laptop. The 30-foot screen behind the stage lit up. First, an Ancestry DNA report. The words blurred for a second, then sharpened. Possible father. Paternity, 99.97%. Then a photograph. A 29-year-old man in a New York Philharmonic violinist's uniform. Black concert attire. A slight smile. And I saw it immediately, my great-grandfather's nose. The distinctive shape Richard Alexander Whitmore I had passed down through 4 generations. And the eyes. My own eyes. The same eyes I'd looked at in the mirror for 56 years. "This is my father's biological child, with a woman named Simone Delaney," Sterling said through the microphone. "My father has kept this secret for 30 years. The ballroom made a collective sound, 380 guests gasping as one. But I wasn't looking at them. I was staring at that face on the screen. Ronan Delaney, the caption read. Born March 1996. If that was my son, then she wasn't dead. In those 4 seconds 30 years, I spent placing white magnolias at Trinity Cemetery turned to ashes. I jumped to my feet. My hand slammed to the table. Gold tableware bounced 4 inches. The $4,800 Dom Perignon glass shattered on the plaza carpet. "She's alive!" I screamed. My voice broke. "Tell me, is she alive?" Tears were streaming down my face onto my Brioni tuxedo. I didn't care. 380 people were staring. I didn't care. My mother's face flushed red, then drained to deathly pale in 2 seconds. Her fingers gripped the silk napkin until her knuckles turned white. Celeste's hands shook. Bordeaux wine spilled across her gown, a red stain spreading across $14,000 of emerald fabric. Her lips trembled. She whispered something broken, barely audible. "Impossible. She's dead. I saw." She stopped, covered her mouth. Sterling's face changed. Confusion replaced certainty. "Wait," he said into the microphone. "What do you mean, Dad? She's dead, isn't she?" The Vivaldi Quartet had stopped playing. Margot Beaumont from the New York Times sat at table 11 with her camera raised. She would take 47 photos in the next 90 seconds. My mother stood abruptly. "Sterling, enough! Sit down now!" Her voice was steel. "One more word, and you're no longer a Prescott." Sterling opened his mouth, closed it. The microphone dropped from his hand. It screeched across the marble floor. That's when Vernon Townsend stood up. Vernon, 75 years old with silver hair and a black formal butler's suit, had raised me since I was 16. He'd been standing in the west corner of the ballroom 5 meters from table 1. Now, he took 6 slow, deliberate steps toward the center of the floor. He carried 3 things: a USB drive, a yellowed envelope, and a 4-page typed list. You're watching this unfold with me, 380 guests, the press, my family, and none of us know yet that the man in the black suit walking toward us has waited 30 years for this moment. "Enough, Sterling," Vernon said. His voice cracked with emotion I'd never heard from him in 40 years. "You don't know what you're saying. Mr. Theodore, I should have said this sooner. 30 years ago." My mother clung to the table edge. "Vernon, sit down. Now. You have no right." Vernon didn't sit. He raised the yellowed envelope. "Madam," he said quietly, "I kept silent for 30 years because you threatened to kill her if I spoke. I kept quiet. She lived, and tonight I cannot keep quiet anymore." The ballroom went silent. 380 people frozen. Vivienne, my pregnant daughter-in-law, in a plum Oscar de la Renta gown, sat at table 1 with her hand on her belly. I would learn later she had given Vernon that USB drive 12 minutes before this moment. Vernon stood in the center of the Plaza Grand ballroom, holding evidence that would destroy my mother and wife. Margot's camera clicked. Sterling's microphone lay on the floor, still live, amplifying the silence. I'll tell you what my family butler reveals next in 4 minutes. But before 380 Forbes elite guests and the press watch a fallen CEO break down, you need to know how I became this man. You need to know about the white magnolias I placed at Trinity Cemetery every September 14th for 30 years. You need to know about the fake tombstone with her name on it. You need to know why I screamed, "She's alive," like a man seeing a ghost. Before Vernon opens that yellowed envelope and plays the recording that will send my mother and wife to prison, before my eldest son realizes he's destroyed the wrong person, before I learn that the woman I mourned for 3 decades has been living 12 miles away in Brooklyn teaching piano, you need to go back with me. Go back 30 years. New York City. 1995. I was 26. She was 24. And everything was still intact. Every September 14th for 30 years, I woke at exactly 3:42 a.m. Let me show you what that looked like. September 14th, 2025. 2 months before the Plaza Gala. 2 months before Sterling would stand up with that microphone. I woke at 3:42 a.m. in the Prescott Estate in Greenwich. My pillow was soaked with sweat. Beside me, Celeste slept undisturbed. She never asked about my September 14th absences. In 30 years of marriage, she never once asked. I dressed in the dark, gray wool pants, white Oxford, navy cashmere sweater. The same clothes every year, though I couldn't have told you why. The drive to Trinity Cemetery in Manhattan took 43 minutes at that hour. No traffic, just yellow streetlights and the hum of my Bentley on empty roads. Grave number 247 was in the northeast corner beneath a white oak tree. The headstone read, Simone Delaney, 1971 to 1995, 24 years old, beloved daughter. I placed white magnolias at the base of the stone. I always brought white magnolias, though I couldn't remember why. Then I sat on the wet grass for 20 minutes, my pants soaking through, and I whispered the same words I'd whispered for 3 decades. "I'm sorry," I said to the granite. "I don't know why I keep coming. I don't know what I'm apologizing for." The stone didn't answer. It never did. I drove home as the sun rose. Vernon was in the kitchen when I walked in at 7 a.m. He poured Ethiopian dark roast into my cup without asking. He knew the routine, but his eyes lingered on my face longer than usual. Something in his expression I should have noticed, should have asked about. I didn't. "Your usual, sir," Vernon said quietly. "Ethiopian dark roast." I nodded and took the cup upstairs. Why did my body remember what my mind refused to know? Why 3:42 a.m. every year for 30 years? I would learn the answer at the Plaza Gala. 2 months later, that 3:42 a.m. was the exact minute Vernon brought a beaten woman to Lenox Hill Emergency Room on September 14th, 1995. My body knew. My consciousness had been denied the truth. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back further, to the beginning. March 1995. I was 26 years old. Fresh Harvard MBA. First weekend of my adult life. I wasn't working towards something. My father had just promoted me to junior VIP at Prescott Holdings. $800 million empire. Legacy stretching back 4 generations. I should have been celebrating at the Yale Club or buying a penthouse in Tribeca. Instead, I walked into a basement jazz club on Bleecker Street at 11 p.m. on a Friday night. I don't remember why I went. Maybe I was running from something. Maybe I was looking for something. All I remember is the tungsten lights and the cigarette smoke and the music. And her. Simone was 24 years old in March 1995. Long brown hair that fell past her shoulders. Light brown eyes the color of honey when the dim stage lights caught them. Gray cardigan over a white t-shirt. Worn jeans. Fingers moving across the white keys of a 1962 Steinway upright like water. She was playing Errol Garner's Misty, head tilted slightly to the left, completely lost in the music. The basement was half full trust fund kids and artists who came to forget the world above. But I only saw her. I stayed for 3 hours. She played Errol Garner, Bill Evans, Thelonious Monk. Never spoke, never looked at the audience. Just played like she was alone in the room. At 2 a.m. the set ended. I left without talking to her. But I came back the next night. Second night she played Bill Evans' Peace Piece. I stayed until closing. Third night, Chopin's Nocturne No. 2. I sat at the same table third row from the stage and memorized the way her shoulders moved when she played. Fourth night, I finally spoke to her. She was at the bar after her 1:30 a.m., sat drinking single malt whiskey neat. I'd rehearsed what to say for 3 nights. When I opened my mouth, everything I'd planned disappeared. "I've listened to you play 4 nights, I said. "I don't know what else to say, but I think I'll regret it for the rest of my life if I don't." She turned, looked at me, tilted her head the same way she did when she played. "That's either the best line I've ever heard or the worst," she said. Her voice was lower than I'd imagined. "Which one were you going for?" "I honestly don't know," I said. She smiled. "I'm Simone." "Richard, I lied. We talked until 4:47 a.m. About music, about Boston where she'd grown up, about escaping family expectations. Though I lied about mine. She told me she'd moved to New York at 22 with $400 and a piano scholarship she'd dropped out of. I told her I worked in finance, but didn't specify where. At 4:47 a.m., we walked 6 blocks to her apartment. 4th floor, Bleecker Street, number 4, B, red door, creaking stairs. A studio with a second-hand upright piano and a mattress on the floor. I was 26 years old, standing on Bleecker Street at 4:47 in the morning, with a woman whose name I'd just learned, and I thought I had forever. We dated for 8 months. I never told her I was Theodore Alexander Prescott III. I was just Richard who loved jazz and stayed until closing. Richard who showed up at her door with cheap wine and expensive lies. I thought I was protecting us. I thought if she didn't know about the money, about the family name, about the empire I was supposed to inherit, she'd love me for me. I was right about that. Just not in the way I thought. 8 months, March through November, spring turned to summer, turned to fall. I'd spend weeknights at board meetings and country club dinners with Celeste, the woman my mother had chosen for me, and weekends in that 4th floor walk-up with Simone, pretending I was someone else. I didn't know those 8 months were all I'd have. I didn't know my mother would find out in August. I didn't know what she would do when she did. 30 years later, I can still smell the Camel cigarette smoke from that basement club. I can still hear her playing Misty. I can still see the way she tilted her head when she looked at me, like I was a puzzle she was trying to solve. And every September 14th for 30 years, my body woke at 3:42 a.m. to mourn a woman I thought was dead. When do you tell the woman you love that you've been lying about who you are for 4 months? July 1995, 4 months after that first night at the jazz club. 4 months of being Richard, just Richard who loved music and stayed until closing. I took her to Coney Island on a Sunday afternoon. Late July heat. The beach was half empty because everyone sensible was at the Hamptons or the Jersey Shore. We weren't sensible. We sat on wet sand near the water shoes, off watching the Ferris wheel turn in the distance. Seagulls cried overhead. Waves crashed and pulled back. The sand was cold and gritty beneath us. I took her hand. "I need to tell you something," I said. She turned to look at me, brown hair tangled from the wind, honey-colored eyes catching the late afternoon sun, gray cardigan over a white sundress. "That sounds serious," she said. "It is. I'd rehearsed this for 3 days. I'd practiced in the mirror. I'd written it down and torn up the paper. Now, sitting on wet sand with her hand in mine, everything I'd planned disappeared. I'm not who I said I was, I started. Her hand tensed. "I'm not Richard. That's not my name. I lied to you because I was afraid." The waves kept coming. The Ferris wheel kept turning. "My real name is Theodore Alexander Prescott III. I watched her face. She didn't move. "My father is Theodore II. My great-grandfather built Prescott Holdings 60 years ago. Real estate, development. My family's assets are $800 million. I'm the heir. I'm supposed to take over when my father retires. Still nothing, just the sound of waves. I hid it from you because I was afraid you'd treat me differently. I wanted you to love me for me, not for the name or the money or the empire I'm supposed to inherit. I wanted to be just Richard who showed up at your door with cheap wine. I wanted to be the guy who stayed until closing. Her hand went still in mine. 30 seconds passed. Felt like 30 years. Theodore, she finally said. That's your real name, Theodore. Yes. Is Theodore Alexander Prescott III? Yes. She pulled her hand away. My heart stopped. Then I saw the tears. They fell onto the wet sand between us. She wasn't crying loudly, just silent tears tracking down her face while she stared at the ocean. Say something, I whispered. Please. She turned to look at me. I love you, she said. Not your last name, not your family's money. I love you. The you who showed up 4 months ago and stayed through my entire set. The you who brings terrible wine and listens to me complain about broken piano keys. She clasped my hand again, tightly. But Theodore, her voice broke. I grew up in Yonkers. My father drove a taxi until he died when I was 16. My mother cleaned offices at night. I know what $800 million means. I know I'm not what your family expects. You're what I want, I said. That's not the same thing. She wiped her eyes with her free hand. If your family can't accept me, I don't want you to have to choose. I'll leave. I don't want to be the reason you lose everything. You're not a burden. I will be, to them. She looked at me. Are you sure about this? Are you sure about me? I was 26 years old, kneeling on wet sand at Coney Island, promising to protect a woman from a family I didn't yet know was capable of violence. I should have known. I should have seen what my mother was. But I was 26 and in love, and I thought love was enough. You're not a burden, I said. You're the future, my future. I took both her hands in mine, pulled her to standing. The sun was setting orange and purple, bleeding across the horizon. The Ferris wheel lights were starting to come on. I'll protect you, I said, from my family, from expectations, from everything. I promise. She looked at me for a long time. Then she stepped closer and put her arms around my neck. Okay, she whispered. Okay, Theodore. We stood there on Coney Island Beach until the sky turned dark and the stars came out. Then we walked back to the subway, holding hands, back to her 4th-floor apartment on Bleecker Street. That night she lay with her head on my chest in her studio apartment. Is your mother scary? She asked quietly. Will she hate me? I laughed, actually laughed, pulled her closer. I'll protect you, I said. I promise. She's traditional and demanding, but I'll handle it. I'll talk to her. I'll make her understand. When? Soon, not yet. Let me have a little more time with just us. Then I'll tell my family. I'll make them understand that you're not negotiable. She was quiet for a moment. I love you, Theodore, she said. I love you too. Have you ever made a promise you were certain you could keep? I had. I was wrong. The promise I made on that beach would haunt me for 30 years. The promise to protect her. The promise that I'd handle my family. The promise that love was enough. I made a promise at Coney Island that afternoon. I promised to protect her from my family, from expectations, from shame. I broke it. A month after that sunset, my mother would discover that Simone existed. A private investigator would hand her photographs of me walking into that 4th-floor apartment at 2 a.m. Photographs of us at the jazz club. Photographs of Coney Island. 2 months after that beach conversation, my mother would make her own promise. And unlike me, she would keep it. But I didn't know that yet. That night in July, lying in Simone's apartment with her head on my chest, I thought I was invincible. I thought love conquered everything. I thought the Prescott name and the empire and the expectations could be managed with logic and determination. I was 26 years old and I knew everything. 30 years later, I know nothing except this. I made a promise at Coney Island. I broke it, and I still can't forgive myself. 1 month after Coney Island, my mother discovered Simone existed. I sat at my family's dinner table on a Friday night in August and met the woman my mother had chosen to be my wife. I'd driven to the Prescott estate in Greenwich expecting a routine dinner. I walked into the formal dining room at 6:30 and saw the Wedgwood china set for 5. The baccarat chandelier was lit, candles on the table. My mother, Constance, sat at her usual place. My father, Theodore II, sat silent beside her, 58 years old, married to Constance for 33 years, and long ago neutered of any opinion that contradicted hers. My great-grandfather Richard I sat at the head of the table, 86 years old, the man who built Prescott Holdings in 1935, now too frail to stop his daughter from destroying what he'd taught me family meant. And beside my great-grandfather sat a woman I'd never met. She was 25, navy dress, pearl earrings, blonde hair pulled back in a French twist, perfect posture, practiced smile. "Theodore, darling," my mother said, sugar-coated steel. "So glad you could join us. This is Celeste, daughter of Edward and Catherine Ashford from Connecticut. Wonderful family, old money, very respectable." Celeste stood and extended her hand. Her smile was rehearsed. "It's lovely to finally meet you, Theodore," she said. "Your mother has told me so much about the family business." I shook her hand automatically, looked at my mother. "Your future wife," Constance finished. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. "I'm sorry, what?" "Sit down, Theodore," my mother said. "Let's have a civilized dinner before we discuss details." The room tilted. I sat. My great-grandfather's eyes met mine across the table. He knew. I could see it in his face. He knew this was wrong. Dinner was roasted duck. Constance made pleasant conversation about Connecticut society and the Ashford family's investment portfolio. Celeste laughed at appropriate moments. My father said nothing. I couldn't taste the food. After dessert, my mother folded her napkin. "I hired someone to follow you for 3 months. Theodore," she said. Her voice was ice. "I know about the jazz club. I know about the girl. I know about the 4th-floor apartment on Bleecker Street where you've been spending your Tuesday and Thursday nights." My blood went cold. "Her name is Simone Delaney, 24 years old, pianist, dropped out of a music scholarship. Father was a taxi driver, mother cleans offices." She recited it like a grocery list. Unsuitable in every way. Celeste's smile didn't waver. She'd known. She'd known before she walked into this room. I was 26 years old, sitting at a table where 4 generations of Prescott men had made decisions, and my mother was making mine for me. "You will end that relationship immediately," Constance said. "You will marry Celeste, 6 months from now, November. That is the only condition under which you remain a Prescott." "No," I said. My mother didn't blink. "Excuse me, I said no." My voice was shaking. "I'm not marrying someone I've never met. I'm in love with a pianist from Yonkers whose father drives a taxi." Constance's laugh was sharp. "Don't be naive, Theodore. You're 26 years old. You'll be CEO of this company in 10 years. You need a wife who understands that world. Celeste understands." I stood from the table. "I love her. I'm not leaving her. I'm not marrying a stranger because you decided my life for me." "Then you'll lose everything," Constance said calmly. "The name, the money, the company, the future, all of it. You'll be nobody. And that pianist will be with a man who has nothing to offer her except broken promises and poverty." My great-grandfather finally spoke. His voice was weak. "Constance," he said, "this isn't right. You can't force—" "Father, this is family business." Constance cut him off without looking at him. "Stay out of it." She turned back to me. "You have until the end of the month to decide. Marry Celeste, or I'll have the lawyers draft disinheritance papers. You'll have nothing, and neither will she." I walked out. I drove back to Manhattan, back to Bleecker Street. Simone was practicing Chopin when I walked in. She looked up and smiled. "You're early," she said. "I thought Friday was family dinner." I couldn't tell her, not yet. I kissed her and told her I'd left early because I missed her. I said no for a week. I meant it. I thought I meant it. But my father called every day. The lawyers sent letters. My mother's deadline approached. And every time I looked at Simone in that 4th-floor walk-up with the second-hand piano and the mattress on the floor, I thought about what my mother had said. Without the Prescott name, I had nothing. No money, no connections, no future except what I could build from scratch. And Simone, who grew up in Yonkers with a taxi driver father and a mother who cleaned offices, would be with a man who couldn't protect her from poverty. My mother knew that. She'd already won. When does a man become complicit in his own cowardice? The moment he chooses money over love, or the moment he tells himself he's choosing for someone else's good? I told myself I was protecting Simone. I told myself that without the Prescott fortune, I'd drag her down into poverty with me. I told myself that my mother would find a way to destroy her if I didn't comply. I told myself a lot of things. The truth was simpler. I was afraid. I was 26 years old, and I'd never been anything except a Prescott. I didn't know how to be nobody, and I couldn't imagine asking Simone to love a nobody. September 1995, 1 month after that dinner. I called my mother. "I'll do it," I said. "I'll marry Celeste." There was a pause. Good, Constance said. I'll handle the rest. What does that mean? It means I'll make sure the pianist understands you're no longer available. Don't worry about the details, Theodore. I'll take care of everything. She hung up. I sat in my office staring at the phone for an hour. I didn't go to Bleecker Street that night, or the next night. I was a coward. I said no. I stood from that table, walked out of that dining room, and said no. I said it for a week. I thought I meant it. But Prescott blood doesn't say no to 4 generations of wealth and power and expectation. A month later, September 1995, I called my mother and said yes. And the moment I said yes to Celeste, I sentenced Simone to death. My mother tried to buy Simone's silence for $500,000 in cash. I didn't know that until 30 years later, but I'm telling you now because you need to understand what I couldn't see then. Early September 1995, Sunday morning, 10 a.m. I was at the Prescott estate pretending to review wedding invitations with Celeste. My mother was standing outside Simone's 4th-floor apartment on Bleecker Street. She'd brought her attorney, Hartwell, 62 years old, gray suit leather briefcase, 30 years of making inconvenient problems disappear for wealthy clients. Simone answered the door in sweatpants and an oversized t-shirt, no makeup, hair pulled back. She'd been crying. She hadn't heard from me in a week. My mother didn't introduce herself, just walked in. Hartwell followed, set his black briefcase on Simone's kitchen table, opened it, $500,000, cash, bundled hundreds, stacked neat. $500,000, my mother said. Her voice was ice. You leave New York. You never see my son again. You never contact him. Sign the NDA. This is all I ask. Simone's hands trembled, but she stood tall. I love him, she said. I don't want your money. I need to tell him. Tell him what? My mother interrupted. That you trapped him. He's engaged to Celeste. November wedding. He's moved on. You should too. Simone's face went pale. She didn't know. I hadn't told her. I was a coward who had disappeared without explanation. I don't believe you, Simone whispered. Call him, my mother said. Ask him yourself, or take the money and leave with dignity. Simone shook her head. Tears fell. I don't care about the money. I love Theodore, and She stopped. She'd been about to say it, about to tell my mother what I didn't know. Simone was 2 months pregnant with my child. She caught herself, closed her mouth. She wasn't going to tell my mother before she told me, even after I'd abandoned her. I'm not leaving, Simone said quietly. I don't want your money. I want to talk to Theodore. My mother stood, closed the briefcase. Then you've made your choice, she said. She walked out. Hartwell followed. That's when my mother made her second call. A woman refused $500,000 because she loved a man who'd already chosen someone else. A woman protected a secret she should have revealed. A woman signed her own death warrant with principle. My mother sat in her black Mercedes outside that apartment building. She used the car phone, called Celeste. The girl refused, my mother said. She's pregnant. I'm certain of it. You understand what needs to happen. Make sure she loses it. I don't care how. Celeste was my fiancée of 1 week, 25 years old, eager to please her future mother-in-law, eager to secure her place in the Prescott family. I understand, Celeste said. I'll handle it. My sister Colleen knows people who can... I don't need details, my mother interrupted. I need results. Colleen Ashford was 23 years old in September 1995, Celeste's younger sister, ambitious, cold, eager to help her sister secure the marriage that would make the Ashford family Prescott adjacent. Colleen made 4 phone calls, 4 men she knew from Connecticut, former security, former military, men who did cash work and didn't ask questions. The plan was simple. September 14th, night, Bleecker Street, 4th floor. Beat her until she miscarries. Don't kill her, that brings police. Just eliminate the pregnancy. Payment $80,000, $20,000 each. Colleen made the arrangements. Celeste approved. My mother never asked for details. I was planning my wedding to Celeste. I didn't know any of this was happening. September 14th, 1995, 10:14 p.m., light rain. Simone was 3 months pregnant, playing Debussy's Clair de Lune on her upright piano. She played when she was sad. She'd been playing for hours. 4 masked men broke down her door with a crowbar. She turned from the piano, saw them, clutched her stomach. Don't hurt my child, she screamed. Please don't hurt my baby. I'll do whatever you want. Don't. Blow to the head. She fell backward, hit her head on the piano bench. Blow to the stomach. She curled around her belly, trying to protect what was inside. Another blow. Another. She collapsed on the carpet, Blood pooled around her head. Her hands were still clutched around her stomach. 90 seconds. That's how long it took to destroy 2 lives, the mother and the unborn child she was trying to protect. The men left, down the stairs, into a van, drove north on Bleecker. Celeste sat in a Lincoln Town car 30 meters down the street. She'd been there the whole time, watching the 4th floor window, waiting. Her phone buzzed. Text from Colleen, done. Celeste started the engine, drove north toward the Hamptons, didn't look back at the 4th floor window where Simone was dying. Simone lay on the carpet of apartment 4B. Blood pooled around her head. The piano bench was overturned. Debussy's sheet music scattered across the floor like snow. She was unconscious, 3 months pregnant, bleeding. Nobody knew, nobody helped. I was asleep in Greenwich, in the estate, in my childhood bedroom. I'd gone to bed at 10 p.m., reviewing wedding seating charts. At 10:14 p.m., the exact moment Simone's head hit the floor, I had a dream I can't remember. My pillow was soaked with sweat when I woke at 3:42 a.m. I didn't know why. Simone lay there for 47 minutes. The rain got heavier. Thunder rolled over Greenwich Village. The 4th floor window of apartment 4B was dark. Her neighbors heard nothing. Or, if they did, they didn't care. New York in the 90s, you heard screams, you turned up your TV. 47 minutes. Blood soaking into the carpet, her hands still clutched around her stomach, breathing shallow, heart rate dropping. The baby inside her, my child, though I didn't know it existed, fighting to stay alive. She lay on the carpet of apartment 4B for 47 minutes before anyone found her. Blood pooled around her head. The piano bench was overturned. Debussy's sheet music scattered across the floor. Nobody knew, nobody helped, until Vernon came in. I wasn't there when Vernon saved her life. I was at home in Greenwich, in the Prescott estate, planning my wedding to the woman who'd ordered her death. Vernon was 45 years old in 1995. He'd raised me since I was 16. He knew me better than my own father did. And on September 14th, 1995, at 11:08 p.m., he saved the woman I loved. He was delivering contract papers to my old Bleecker Street address. I'd asked him to pick up mail I'd left behind when I stopped going there. When I abandoned Simone without explanation, he climbed the stairs to the 4th floor, heard groaning through the door of apartment 4B. Vernon broke the door down with his shoulder. He found her unconscious in a pool of blood. The piano bench was overturned. Debussy's sheet music scattered everywhere. Her hands were still clutched around her stomach. He checked her pulse. Weak, but there. He put his hand on her abdomen, felt movement. The baby was still alive. Vernon carried her down 4 flights of stairs, flagged a taxi on Bleecker Street, gave the driver a $100 bill, and told him to drive to Lenox Hill Hospital. They arrived at the emergency entrance at 3:42 a.m. September 15th. Dr. Elena Vasquez was the 25-year-old ER nurse who saved them both. She took one look at Simone, unconscious, blood-soaked, 3 months pregnant, and started barking orders. "She's lost a lot of blood," Dr. Vasquez said. "Blunt force trauma to head and abdomen. She's pregnant approximately 12 weeks. Get me 2 units O negative and prep for ultrasound. Now." Vernon stood in the waiting room for 6 hours. He didn't call me. He didn't call my mother. He made one phone call. To Hartwell. At dawn, 6:17 a.m. Hartwell arrived at Lenox Hill. He found Vernon in the waiting room. "How is she?" Hartwell asked. "Alive," Vernon said. "Barely. The baby survived. But if Mrs. Prescott knows she's alive..." "She can't know," Hartwell interrupted. "Ever. Or Constance will finish what she started." Vernon looked at him. "You knew," Vernon said quietly. "You knew what they were planning." Hartwell didn't deny it, just stood there in his gray suit with his leather briefcase. "I brought papers," Hartwell said. $500,000. The girl was supposed to take it and leave. She refused. What happened after that, I didn't know the details. But I'm not surprised. Vernon carried a secret for 30 years that would have changed everything. He knew she was alive. He knew where she was, and he chose silence because silence kept her breathing. "We need to make her dead," Hartwell said. "Officially, death certificate, newspaper obituary, grave marker, everything Constance needs to believe the problem is solved." That's fraud," Vernon said. "That's survival," Hartwell corrected. "The girl disappears. New identity, new city. Constance gets her proof. Theodore gets his grief. Everyone moves on. And the girl stays alive." Hartwell spent $30,000 creating a fake death. Death certificate Simone Delaney. DOB 1971. DOD September 14th, 1995. Newspaper obituary Young woman dies in Bleecker Street car accident. Grave marker Trinity Cemetery plot 247. Simone Delaney, 1971 to 1995. Beloved daughter. The watch my Cartier watched the one I'd given Simone in July. Hartwell kept it as evidence. Proof for my mother that Simone was really dead. Simone woke up September 23rd, 9 days after the attack. She didn't remember what happened. Concussion and trauma had erased September 14th from her memory. She only remembered playing piano, then waking up in a hospital bed. "Where's Theodore?" she asked Vernon. Her hand went to her stomach. "I need to tell him about—" "Miss Delaney," Vernon said quietly. "I'm sorry. Mr. Theodore is engaged to someone else. He's moved on. He asked me to tell you that he can't see you anymore." It was a lie. I never said that. Vernon said it to protect her. Because if she went back to me, if she tried to tell me about the baby, my mother would find out she was alive. And next time, Vernon couldn't save her. Simone left the hospital September 28th, changed her name, kept only her last name, Delaney, moved to Brooklyn Heights. Vernon sent her anonymous money every month for 30 years, $2,500, always from a different bank account, always untraceable. I knew none of this. September 23rd, 1995. I was in my great-grandfather's reading room at the Prescott estate, going over wedding seating charts with Celeste. 1 month until the ceremony. My mother walked in. She was carrying a small leather box. "Theodore," she said. Her voice was soft, sympathetic. "The police found this at an accident scene on Bleecker Street, September 14th. A young woman died. A car accident. I'm so sorry, darling." She opened the box. My Cartier watch, the one I'd given Simone, tank style, vintage 1985, engraved on the back for S always R. Richard, the fake name I'd used. My mother handed me a folded newspaper clipping. Simone Delaney, 24, died September 14th in single car accident on Bleecker Street. I read. My hands were shaking. No other vehicles involved. Police found no signs of foul play. The watch fell from my hand to the carpet. I collapsed into the Italian leather armchair. I cried for 47 minutes. My mother sat beside me. Celeste came in halfway through, put her hand on my shoulder. "I should have protected her," I whispered. "I promised I'd protect her." "You couldn't have known Theodore," Celeste said. False sympathy. "It was an accident." She was the woman who'd sat in a car 30 meters away, watching the attack she'd helped orchestrate. She was comforting me about the death she'd ordered. I held that Cartier watch in my hand and believed my mother when she said it came from the police. I believed the newspaper. I believed the grave. For 30 years, I believed every lie. October 1995. I married Celeste at Trinity Church, the same church where I would place white magnolias at a fake grave every September 14th for 3 decades. I surrendered to grief. I surrendered to my mother's will. I surrendered to my family's expectations. I became CEO. I built the empire. I raised 3 sons. I slept beside Celeste for 30 years. And every September 14th, I woke at 3:42 a.m., the exact minute Vernon brought Simone to the emergency room, with a dream I couldn't remember and sweat soaking through my pillow. 30 years later, I still haven't forgiven myself for that surrender. Until Vernon told me in that Cadillac at 1:23 in the morning, crossing the Brooklyn Bridge, that I'd been deceived. 30 years passed, and I built a life on a lie I didn't know I was living. September 2025. 47 days before the Plaza Gala, I was 56 years old, CEO of Prescott Holdings, worth $2.4 billion, married to Celeste for 30 years, 3 grown sons. I sat at the breakfast table in the Prescott estate in Greenwich, Lakeview through the windows, September morning sun on the water, Wall Street Journal folded beside my coffee cup. Celeste sat across from me, 55 years old, silver streaks in her blonde hair, reading something on her iPad. "Patricia suggested the gala include a tribute to your mother's 80th, she said, without looking up. "Separate cake, speech from Clarence. What do you think?" I turned a page in the journal. Fine," I said. "Whatever mother wants. It's her company as much as mine." Vernon poured coffee into my cup. He was 75 years old, silver hair, black formal suit. He had been with our family since before I was born. "Your usual, sir," Vernon said. "Ethiopian dark roast." His eyes lingered on Celeste for 2 seconds longer than necessary. I didn't notice. I was reading about interest rates. Vermon knew. He'd known for 30 years. He poured coffee for the woman who'd ordered Simone's death and served breakfast to the man who mourned her at a fake grave every September 14th. He watched us live our lie and said nothing. because saying something would have killed her. How does a man live 30 years in a lie without knowing? The same way a body wakes at 3:42 every September 14th. Knowledge buried so deep consciousness can't reach it. Late September 2025, 30 days before the gala. Prescott Tower, 52nd floor, conference room overlooking Central Park, floor-to-ceiling windows, mahogany table, 12 leather chairs. 4-hour planning meeting. My mother Constance sat at the head of the table, 81 years old, cream Chanel suit, 8-carat diamond ring catching the light. The Iron Lady, 6 decades ruling our family. Clarence Garrett sat to her right, 71. Chairman of the board for 40 years. Gray suit, steady hands. The man who would introduce me for the Industry Leader Award before Sterling stood up. Margaret Klein from the Plaza Hotel sat across from me, 52 years old, senior event planner, 28 years orchestrating Manhattan's elite celebrations. She had no idea she was planning the public destruction of the family paying her. The Plaza Grand Ballroom accommodates 380, comfortably, Margaret said, presenting her iPad. 38 tables of 10, Veuve Clicquot for cocktails, Dom Perignon for dinner, live string quartet, 30-foot video screen for the tribute montage, budget estimate $470,000 for the evening. Acceptable, my mother said. She straightened her Chanel jacket. This event will shake New York. 60 years of Prescott Holdings, my 80th birthday. Theodore's industry leader recognition, the Times, the Journal, Bloomberg, everyone will be there. Clarence reviewed the guest list on his tablet. Confirmed RSVPs from 3 Forbes 400 families, he said. 2 federal judges, the Manhattan DA, Goldman Sachs chairman. This will be the business event of the year. I signed the budget approval without reading it. $470,000 for a party where my eldest son would destroy me. I had no idea. Table arrangements, my mother said. She pulled up the seating chart. Table 1, immediate family. Theodore, Celeste, myself, the 3 boys, and Vivienne. Table 2, the Ashford Celeste's parents and sister. Table 5, Pastor Reyes from Trinity Church. I want everyone positioned perfectly for the photographs. The awards ceremony is scheduled for 9:15, Margaret said. Clarence will give the introduction, 5-minute speech, then the industry leader presentation, video tribute playing on the screen behind you. Very moving. Menu, my mother asked. Poached salmon for the first course, filet mignon for the main, chocolate soufflé for dessert, all paired wines. Perfect, my mother said. I approved everything. Wasn't really listening. I was thinking about quarterly reports, about the board meeting the following week, about whether Sterling was ready for more responsibility. Sterling, 29 years old, senior VP, my eldest son. He was planning a hostile takeover. I didn't know. He'd hired Barrett Finch, my middle son, to help expose my secret. I didn't know. He'd found Ronan Delaney through Ancestry DNA. I didn't know. I sat in that conference room approving $470,000 for a party where my eldest son would destroy me, and I had no idea. November 1st, Saturday. Margaret confirmed. Cocktails at 7 p.m., dinner at 8:30, awards at 9:15. I'll coordinate with the New York Times photographer. This will be spectacular. My mother smiled, satisfied. 60 years, she said. My father-in-law Richard built Prescott Holdings in 1935. 90 years of family legacy. This Gala celebrates everything we've protected, everything we've built, everything she'd protected, including a 30-year-old murder conspiracy. The press will love it, Clarence said. Forbes already confirmed they're sending their senior business editor. Wall Street Journal wants an exclusive interview with you the week before. To schedule it, I said. The meeting ended at 4:30 p.m. I signed the contracts, shook Margaret's hand, told her it all looked excellent. I rode the elevator down to the parking garage, got in my Bentley, drove home to Greenwich. Celeste was in the garden when I arrived. She asked how the meeting went. Yes, fine, I said. Everything's set. Mother's happy. Margaret says it'll be the event of the year. Good, Celeste said. She was wearing gardening gloves, pruning roses. I want everything perfect. Your mother deserves it. The woman who'd sat in a car watching men beat Simone unconscious said, my mother deserved a perfect party. I kissed her cheek and went inside. Vernon was in the kitchen, making dinner. He looked at me. Everything all right, sir? He asked quietly. I'm fine, Vernon, I said. Just tired. He nodded, went back to chopping vegetables. He knew, he'd always known, and he was waiting. Waiting for November 1st. Waiting for the moment when he could finally tell the truth. Constance was right about one thing: the event would shake New York. But it wouldn't shake New York because of our 60th anniversary, or her 80th birthday, or my Industry Leader Award. It would shake New York because in 47 days, Vernon would walk into the center of that grand ballroom with a USB drive and a yellowed envelope and reveal what she'd done 30 years ago. She was planning her triumph. She was building her own gallows. What's the price of vanity? $399, as it turns out. That's what it cost my wife to destroy everything we'd built on a foundation of lies. I didn't know any of this was happening when it happened. I learned it later after the gala, after Sterling's public execution of our family. I learned it from Celeste herself in our lawyer's office when she was trying to explain how the secret got out. She sat across from me in that 40th floor conference room and told me about the magazine article that started it all. August 27th, 2025. 11 p.m. Celeste was in our Greenwich bedroom with a glass of Sancerre and the September issue of Vanity Fair. She'd told me she was going to bed early. I was in my study reviewing acquisition proposals. What she was actually doing was reading a 12-page spread about how Manhattan's elite families were using genetic testing to document their bloodlines for posterity. The Vanderbilts had done it. The Astors had commissioned heritage albums with DNA analysis. Caroline Herrera's granddaughter had traced her lineage back to Spanish nobility. The article called it the new status symbol, scientific proof of your place in history. Celeste saw an opportunity. Sterling's wife Vivienne was 4 months pregnant with our first grandchild. Celeste imagined a leather-bound heritage book she could present at the baby shower in December. A family tree with genetic confirmation, professional calligraphy, historical records. Something that would make the other grandmothers at the club jealous. Something that screamed Prescott permanence. She ordered the Ancestry DNA kit that night, paid $399 with her Amex. Selected expedited shipping. The package arrived at our Greenwich house on August 29th, a Friday. That evening, Sterling came to the house for dinner. We did that sometimes, the four of us: me, Celeste, Sterling, Vivienne. Constance usually joined us, but she was in the Hamptons that weekend. I remember we had Chilean sea bass. I remember Vivienne talked about nursery colors. After dinner, Celeste gave Sterling the DNA kit in the study. She'd wrapped it in cream tissue paper, like it was a gift. Sterling told me later what he was thinking when she handed it to him. He was thinking about the Tribeca office lease renewal. He was thinking about the Singapore expansion budget. He was thinking his mother had finally lost her mind with the pregnancy hormones by proxy. "It's for the baby," Celeste said, according to Sterling's account. "The baby isn't born yet," Sterling replied. "No, darling, it's your DNA for the heritage album, so your child knows where they come from." Sterling looked at the kit, looked at his mother, looked at me. I was signing some paperwork Hartwell had sent over. I wasn't paying attention. I should have been paying attention. His phone buzzed email from Tokyo about quarterly projections. "Sure, mother," Sterling said. "Whatever you want. Endif, Mwomf, and Wokot Pool." He did the cheek swab right there in the study, sealed it in the provided envelope, handed it back to Celeste. The whole thing took 90 seconds. 90 seconds to detonate 30 years of carefully constructed lies. Celeste mailed the sample the next morning from the Greenwich post office. Tracking number 9405118992235078421336. I have that number memorized now. It's the number that ended my marriage. The kit arrived at the Ancestry DNA processing facility in Utah on September 2nd. Standard processing time was 6 to 8 weeks, but Celeste had paid for expedited service 3 to 4 weeks. I went to Boston that week for a board meeting. Celeste went to a spa in Vermont with her sister Colleen. Sterling closed the Singapore deal. Vivienne ordered a crib from Italy. Constance returned from the Hamptons and started planning the November Gala. We were all just living our lives unaware that, in a laboratory in Salt Lake City, technicians were extracting my son's DNA and comparing it to millions of samples in their database. September 9th, the lab had a processing delay equipment malfunction. It bought us one more week of peace. September 16th, the results were ready. September the 17th, 7:42 a.m. Sterling got an email from Ancestry DNA. Subject line, "Your DNA results are ready." He was in his Tribeca penthouse drinking espresso, reviewing pre-market trading data. He almost deleted it. Vivienne was still asleep. He had a conference call in 20 minutes. He clicked the link. Sterling told me later that he stared at the screen for 3 full minutes before his brain processed what he was seeing. The results showed his ethnicity estimate Western European expected. Medical predispositions, nothing remarkable. And then, at the bottom, the section that changed everything: DNA matches. Top match Ronan Delaney. Relationship half-brother. Shared DNA 1,847 centimorgans. Confidence level 99.97%. Sterling had never heard the name Ronan Delaney in his life. He clicked on the profile. Age 29, born September 1995. Lived in Brooklyn. Occupation software architect, mother Simone Delaney. Sterling opened a new browser tab, typed Simone Delaney obituary 1995 into Google, found the fake notice Hartwell had planted 30 years earlier. Died September 14th in a car accident. Survived by infant son, Ronan. Sterling opened a third tab, searched Theodore Prescott 1995. Found a New York Times wedding announcement from October 1995. Me and Celeste. The math was obvious. Here's what Sterling did next. He didn't call me. He didn't call Celeste. He didn't have an emotional crisis about discovering a secret half-brother. He opened an encrypted folder on his laptop, created a new file, named it a father_project_Q4_2025. And he started planning. Because Sterling didn't see a family secret, he saw leverage. He saw a hostile takeover opportunity. He saw a way to take Prescott Holdings from his father and install himself as CEO before his 30th birthday. He saw a weapon and he picked it up. The woman who buried that girl 30 years ago dug her up herself with a $399 kit. The most dangerous person in any negotiation is the one who doesn't need anything from you. And on September 23rd, 2025 at 11:47 p.m., my son became that person. I didn't know about that night until 6 weeks later when Vernon showed me the laptop forensics. By then, it was too late. By then, Sterling had already destroyed me in front of 380 people. But that Tuesday night in September, while I slept 12 miles away in Greenwich, he sat in his Tribeca penthouse and weaponized my past. The DNA results were still on his screen. I've seen the screenshots Vernon recovered. Top match RD relationship half-brother. Shared DNA 1,847 centimorgans. Confidence level 99.97%. Sterling sat at his glass desk overlooking the Hudson River. Floor-to-ceiling windows. City lights reflecting off black water. Blue laptop glow on his face. According to the system logs, he'd been staring at that screen for 3 hours and 12 minutes. His first words, captured by his own Alexa device, which Vernon later subpoenaed, were not shock or hurt or confusion. Not a brother, Sterling said to the empty room. A lever. That's when he created the folder. I've seen it. Vernon walked me through every file. Father_project_Q4_2025. 3 subfolders inside legal_vulnerabilities. Board_contacts. Timeline_attack. Military precision. Clinical detachment. My 29-year-old son analyzing the discovery of his secret half-brother the way he'd analyze a merger opportunity. Asset or liability. Cost versus benefit. Risk-adjusted return. He opened a new document, typed, question: can illegitimate biological son be weaponized for hostile takeover? Truster. Then he started calculating. I've spent 10 months trying to understand what happened in Sterling's head that night. Was there a moment, even 5 seconds, when he felt something human curiosity about his half-brother, anger at me for the lie, sympathy for the woman my mother tried to kill? Vernon says no. The forensics show pure strategy from minute 1. No Google searches about Ronan Delaney's life. No social media stalking. No attempt to understand the human being on the other end of that DNA match. Just calculations. Sterling pulled up the Prescott Industries shareholder agreement, the one we'd signed in 2010 when I gave him his first equity stake. He was 15 years old. I remember thinking I was teaching him responsibility, building his future, preparing him to lead the company I'd spent 30 years growing. He scrolled to page 47. Section 12.3, Conduct and Disclosure Requirements. The morality clause I'd insisted on, including for all shareholders, including myself. Any concealment of material family information that could affect fiduciary duty constituted grounds for forced divestment. I'd written that clause. Me, Theodore Prescott, age 41, so proud of my ethical corporate governance. Sterling highlighted it. Yellow. Saved a screenshot to legal_vulnerabilities. According to the timestamp, he smiled. The laptop camera caught it. Vernon showed me. Not a smirk, not anger, just satisfaction. The expression of someone who'd found exactly what he needed. He opened a spreadsheet, started running numbers. My 51% controlling stake, his 19%. The remaining 30% split among board members and minority investors. He typed public exposure plus shareholder, chaos plus morality clause equals forced resignation. Hostile takeover, window 90 days. Then he wrote, he built the weapon. I just need to aim it. I was in Greenwich that night, asleep in the bed I shared with Celeste, dreaming about nothing, content, secure, believing my son loved me, while he sat in Tribeca calculating my destruction. Here's what Vernon's forensics couldn't capture, the moment Sterling learned to think like this. But I don't need forensics for that. I know exactly when I taught him. He was 7 years old. We were in my study in Greenwich, the same study where 22 years later, Celeste would hand him the DNA kit that started all of this. I was teaching him chess. We had the board set up on my desk. Sterling had just lost his queen to one of my bishops. He was crying not loud, just tears running down his face. 7-year-old frustration. It's just a game, I told him. But I lost my best piece, he said. I moved my own queen into a vulnerable position. Let him take it with his rook. The queen isn't your best piece, I said. Neither is the king. They're all just pieces, Sterling. You sacrifice anything if it wins the game. He stopped crying, looked at the board. Even my own king, he asked. Especially your own king, I said. That's how you win. He checkmated me 3 moves later. I was so proud. 22 years later, at 11:47 p.m. on September 23rd, 2025, Sterling whispered to his empty Tribeca penthouse, "Thank you, Dad, for teaching me everything." Then he went back to his calculations. He opened his calendar, sent 3 encrypted meeting invitations within 10 minutes. September 24th with Clifford Harrington. Clifford had served on Prescott Industries' board for 11 years, long enough to know where every skeleton hid, corrupt enough to sell the map. September 26th with Sebastian Cross. Sebastian ran Crosstech, our biggest competitor, and had been trying to acquire Prescott Industries since 2019. September 28th with Barrett Finch. Barrett was the kind of PR strategist who could make a scandal look like a public service or turn a family dinner into a feeding frenzy. Each meeting labeled innocuously: Q4 strategy, market analysis, communications review. Sterling created a master timeline, 45 days until the Plaza Hotel Gala. The event Constance had been planning for months, 380 guests, New York's elite, the perfect public stage. He typed research September, recruit October, execute November 1st. Then he did something that Vernon's forensics captured, but I still can't believe. Sterling stood, walked to his bar, poured himself 2 fingers of Pappy Van Winkle 23-year bourbon, my favorite. He kept a bottle in his penthouse specifically for when I visited. He raised the glass to the empty room. To the king, he said. Drank it, neat, didn't even flinch. Closed his laptop at 1:03 a.m., went to bed. According to his sleep tracker, yes, Vernon subpoenaed everything Sterling slept, 7 hours and 42 minutes. No interruptions. Perfect REM cycles. He slept like a man with nothing on his conscience. Because he didn't have a conscience. Not anymore. Maybe he never did. Maybe I raised something inhuman and just didn't want to see it. Maybe the 7-year-old who learned to sacrifice his own king was already broken, and I was just too proud of my teaching to notice. The child I raised for 29 years became the scariest person I'd ever met. And I had no idea until that Saturday night at the Plaza when he stood in front of 380 people and sacrificed his own king to win the game. The cruelest weapon in any war is the truth told halfway, and on October 12th, 2025 at 9:47 p.m. My biological son heard his first lie about me. Sterling's first meeting was September 24th with Clifford Harrington. His second was September 26th with Sebastian Cross. But the third meeting, October 12th, with Barrett Finch, that's the one that haunts me. Because that's when they weaponized the son I never knew existed. Barrett was waiting at Penn Station, main concourse near the 7th Avenue exit, 9:30 p.m. Sunday night. The fluorescent lights made everyone look sick, commuters streaming past with weekend bags and coffee cups, train announcements echoing off the vaulted ceiling. Barrett had a photograph. Vernon showed it to me, later pulled from Barrett's phone records. A screenshot of Ronan Delaney's LinkedIn profile. Second chair violinist, New York Philharmonic. 29 years old. My son. Ronan emerged from the subway entrance carrying a violin case, black peacoat jeans messenger bag. He'd just finished evening rehearsal at Lincoln Center. According to the MetroCard logs Vernon subpoenaed, Ronan took this route every Sunday night. 9:27 p.m. train from Columbus Circle to Penn Station, then the LIRR home to his apartment in Forest Hills. Barrett had been tracking him for 2 weeks. Ronan Delaney, Barrett said. Ronan stopped, looked at him, cautious. Do I know you? No, Barrett said. But I know who your father is. According to the security footage Vernon obtained, yes, he got everything. Ronan's face went completely still. Not shocked, not angry, just frozen. The expression of someone who'd been waiting 30 years for this sentence. I don't have a father, Ronan said. You do, Barrett said. His name is Theodore Prescott, and he's been lying about you for 3 decades. That's the moment, right there. 9:47 p.m., October 12th. The moment Barrett told the first half of the truth and buried the second half so deep my son would never find it. Barrett was following a script. Vernon recovered it from Sterling's encrypted files. Every word planned, every pause calculated. Sterling had written it himself. Surgical precision targeting Ronan's exact vulnerability. My mother never told me his name, Ronan said. His voice was quiet, Penn Station chaos flowing around them. She died when I was born. I know, Barrett said. September 14th, 1995. Car accident. Theodore Prescott abandoned her 2 weeks before you were born. She was 24 years old. He was 26. He came from money. She came from nothing. He left her to die alone. Every sentence was truth. Every sentence was a lie. Yes, Simone died September 14th. Yes, she was 24. Yes, I was 26. Yes, I came from money. But I didn't abandon her. I didn't know she was alive. My mother tried to have her killed. My wife's sister helped arrange the attack. Hartwell faked her death. Vernon saved her life and hid her from me for 30 years. Barrett didn't mention any of that. How do you know about my mother? Ronan asked. Barrett smiled. The smile of someone about to deliver a line Sterling had written specifically for this moment. Because Celeste Prescott is my mother, Barrett said. Theodore's wife. And she told me everything he did to yours. That was the twist. The script's masterpiece. Making Celeste the truth teller. Positioning her as Ronan's ally. Hiding the fact that Celeste had ordered the attack that nearly killed Simone and destroyed both our lives. Ronan set down his violin case, leaned against the wall, put his hand over his mouth. I need to sit down, he said. They went to the Amtrak waiting area, sat on the plastic chairs under the departure board. Barrett bought him water from a vending machine. Why are you telling me this now? Ronan asked. Because Theodore Prescott is being honored at a gala in 3 weeks, Barrett said. November 1st, Plaza Hotel. 380 guests, New York's elite celebrating him like he's some kind of hero. And I thought you should know what kind of man he really is. Ronan drank the water, stared at the departure board without seeing it. I've wondered my whole life, he said. Who he was, why he never came, if he even knew I existed. He knew Barrett lied, he just didn't care. That was the moment I understood when Vernon showed me the transcripts 6 weeks later, sitting in his office after everything fell apart. Sterling wasn't just destroying me. He was weaponizing the son I never knew. Turning Ronan's 30 years of grief into ammunition, making my biological child hate me before I ever got the chance to meet him. Barrett gave Ronan his business card, scheduled a second meeting, October 19th, 1 week later. Told him to think about whether he wanted justice. Ronan took the card. 3 hours later, 11:15 p.m. Sterling was 47 floors above Fifth Avenue in Sebastian Cross's glass conference room. Manhattan skyline glittering through floor-to-ceiling windows. Mahogany table, leather chairs, the smell of expensive cigars and older money. Clifford Harrington sat across from Sterling, with 14 pages of agreements spread in front of him. 6 months as CEO, Clifford said, reading the terms. Then you take chairman's seat. That's the deal, was está. And that's the deal, Sterling said. 14 pages, sign everyone. Sebastian Cross stood by the window, silent, watching. He'd already signed his portion White Knight investor fallback position if the hostile takeover hit legal complications. 20% equity stake. $600 million commitment. Clifford picked up the pen. Mont Blanc. Sterling's gift. The the kind of detail my son never missed. "And Theodore's 51%?" Clifford asked. "Goes to the company for restructuring," Sterling said. "You'll manage the transition. I'll manage the vision. Sebastian manages the capital. Everybody wins." "Except Theodore," Clifford said. Sterling smiled. "Except Theodore?" Clifford signed page 1, then page 2, then 3, 4, 5. The sound of pen on paper. Each signature another nail in what he thought was my coffin. He signed all 14 pages in 12 minutes. Sterling shook his hand. Sebastian poured scotch. They toasted the future of Prescott Industries under new management. None of them knew what I'd signed in 2022. You're wondering why I didn't see this coming. So was I. Until Vernon showed me what I'd signed 3 years earlier. Third quarter, 2022, routine audit authorization. Board compliance review. External contact documentation for all shareholders and board members. Every meeting, every consulting fee, every conversation with potential acquirers. Clifford's 11 meetings with Sebastian Cross between 2022 and 2025. $50,000 per consultation. $550,000 total. Off the books. Undisclosed. All documented, all time-stamped, all sitting in a legal file Clifford forgot existed. Clifford signed 14 pages that night. He forgot one thing: I'd also signed 14 pages. In 2022, nobody has forgotten more than him. What would you do if you found proof your mother destroyed the woman you loved, and you had 7 days to decide whether to look? Clifford signed his future away on October 12th. I didn't know that yet. Wouldn't know for 3 more weeks. But on October 25th, 1 week before the Plaza Gala that would destroy everything, I got my chance to know. I got my chance to ask the right questions. I got 7 days to stop what was coming. I chose not to look. Constance called me to her reading room that Saturday afternoon. 3:47 p.m. October light streaming through the tall windows of the Greenwich estate. She was sitting in her wingback chair with a stack of note cards working on her 81st birthday speech for the gala. She'd asked me to come help her organize the family stories. "The photos from your father's 60th birthday should be in there," she said, pointing to the Mosler safe behind her desk. "Second shelf, the Burgundy album. I'd opened that safe 1,000 times. Knew the combination by heart. My father had installed it in 1957 original model, built like a bank vault. Constance kept the important things there. Legal documents, jewelry, photo albums from the decades when our family still looked happy. I spun the dial. 23 right, 41 left, 17 right. The bolt clicked. Heavy door swung open with that particular smell: old metal and preserved air and leather binders that hadn't seen daylight in years. The albums were on the second shelf exactly where she said. I pulled out the Burgundy one. September 1987, my father's 60th birthday party. 300 guests at the Greenwich estate. I was 18 years old in those photos. Still believe my parents' marriage was real. My hand touched something underneath the album stack. Brown leather file folder, legal size. I pulled it without thinking. The way you pull something that's slightly out of place. The way you straighten a picture frame that's tilted 1 degree. I should have closed the safe the moment my hand touched that leather, but I opened it instead. The first page was a typed invoice. Hartwell Legal Services letterhead. Date: October 2nd, 1995. Amount $185,000. Paid in full. My heart kicked against my ribs. Sweat broke across my temples. My hands started trembling before my brain understood why. I read 3 lines down. R.E.S. Delaney Matter. Arrangements as discussed. Services rendered September 14th to 30th, 1995. S. Delaney. Simone Delaney. The woman I was supposed to forget. The woman who died in a car accident 30 years ago. The woman whose grave I visited every September 14th at 3:42 a.m. because that was the time the police said she died. Her name, on an invoice, in my mother's safe. $185,000. Arrangements as discussed. I stopped breathing. Not metaphorically. Literally stopped. 4 full seconds. I timed it later in therapy when I was trying to understand the moment my brain chose denial over truth. Behind me, Constance shifted in her chair, still working on note cards, humming something, unaware. I stared at the invoice, tried to make the words mean something else, anything else. Legal consultation, estate planning, charitable donation in Simone's memory. There were explanations, innocent explanations. 17 innocent reasons Hartwell might have billed my mother $185,000 in October 1995 for services rendered in September 1995 regarding Simone Delaney, who supposedly died September 14th. 17 reasons that weren't what I knew it was. Memory hit me like a fist, unannounced, unwanted. September 13th, 1995. 9 p.m. Simone's Bleecker Street apartment. Dim light from the single lamp by her bed. She was 4 months pregnant. I didn't know. She hadn't told me yet. I was there to say I couldn't see her anymore. My mother had threatened to cut me off. My father had threatened to disown me. Celeste Ashford was being presented as my future wife in 3 days. Simone stood in the doorway wearing my Columbia t-shirt, barefoot, hair loose, looking at me with those eyes that saw everything I was too coward to say. "You're not coming back," she said. Not a question. "I have to do what's right for my family," I said, the coward script. "I am your family," she said. I left anyway, walked down 4 flights of stairs, got in my car, drove to Greenwich, didn't look back. The last thing she said was, "I'll wait for you." 30 years later, I was standing in my mother's reading room holding an invoice that said, "My mother paid Hartwell $185,000 the month after Simone died, after I married Celeste, after the car accident that killed the woman who said she'd wait for me." I stood there 47 seconds. I know because Vernon pulled the estate security footage later, showed me 47 seconds of me frozen at the safe, holding that file staring at my mother's back. 47 seconds to choose. I chose wrong. I told myself she's 81. The gala is in 7 days. 380 people are coming. Don't make things difficult. There could be explanations. Innocent explanations. I returned the file to its exact position under the photo albums. Closed the safe, spun the dial, erased the combination from the afternoon, picked up the Burgundy album, turned to my mother. "Found them," I said. My voice sounded normal. 1995, Dad's 60th. Constance looked up from her note cards, smiled. "Perfect," she said. "Thank you, darling." I sat beside her for 45 minutes. We went through the photos, laughed at my father's terrible golf swing, marked 3 pictures she wanted to reference in her speech. I didn't mention the brown leather file. Didn't ask about September 1995, didn't say Simone's name, chose peace over truth, chose comfort over courage, chose the same thing I'd chosen 30 years earlier when I walked out of that Bleecker Street apartment and left her waiting. You're wondering why I didn't ask, why I didn't confront her right then. So was I, for 7 days. Until November 1st, when I understood I already knew. I just didn't want to. Wanting not to know is its own kind of knowing. I drove home to Greenwich that evening, had dinner with Celeste. We talked about the gala, the menu, the seating chart, whether Constance's speech would run too long, normal things, comfortable things, safe things. I didn't tell her what I'd seen. Didn't call Vernon, didn't call Hartwell, didn't go back to the estate and demand answers. I had 7 days to stop everything, 7 days to ask one question, 7 days to choose truth over the lie I'd been living for 30 years. I chose to believe my mother. That was the second mistake of my life. The first was 30 years ago. While I slept believing my family was whole, 2 people I barely knew were gathering the evidence that would save me, and neither one told me until it was too late. I left my mother's reading room on October 25th without asking questions, went to bed believing I'd chosen peace. But 7 days earlier on October 18th at 2:17 a.m., my youngest son was reading emails that proved my wife had ordered a murder. Hayes Prescott was 25 years old, the perceptive one who noticed what others missed, and the only one of my 3 children who inherited a conscience. He was in his office on the 32nd floor of Prescott Tower, running analysis for the Singapore expansion. The building was empty, except security. Desk lamp, cold coffee. Manhattan lights through the window. He was accessing archived communications, 7 years of company email backups. Hayes had full access as junior VP of operations. 3 days earlier at dinner, someone at the next table said the name Delaney. Celeste went completely still for 3 seconds, then recovered, changed the subject. Hayes noticed, so at 2:17 a.m. he searched the archive for Delaney. 4 results, all from 1995 to 2000, all sender m.carter@prescottmail.com. Margaret Carter, Colleen Ashford's maiden name, Celeste's sister. Hayes opened the first email. September 20th, 1995. Bleecker arrangement proceeding as discussed. 4 personnel confirmed September 14th. HC will handle documentation. Wire transfer completed per your authorization. $50,000 initial remainder upon completion. He read it 3 times, his hands shaking. Vernon showed me the security footage later. Hayes frozen for 18 seconds. Then he opened the second email, September 28, 1995. Documentation complete. HC confirms matter resolved per specifications. Final payment authorized October 2nd. Recommend permanent file destruction after 6 months. H.C. Hartwell Chambers, our family attorney. That Hayes printed all 4 emails, 14 pages. The printer sounded obscenely loud in the empty building. He put them in a locked document box labeled Q3 Tax Documents 2024. Hid it in his office closet. Told no one. Hayes tried to tell me twice. October 19th at breakfast, October 22nd at the office. Both times I was too busy with gala preparations. "And Dad, can we talk about something important?" he asked. "After the gala," I said. He had courage to look. I had chances to listen. We both failed. But Hayes wasn't the only one gathering evidence while I chose denial. One day after Hayes printed those emails, October 19th at 9:37 a.m., Vivian Prescott opened her husband's laptop and discovered my eldest son was planning to destroy me. Vivian was 28 years old, 8 months pregnant with my first grandchild, and married to my eldest son. Until October 23rd, when she chose integrity over family. Sterling had gone to the gym. Saturday morning, 2-hour routine. Vivian was planning her baby shower. She needed the house buying documents folder. Sterling's laptop was on his desk. Unlocked, screen showing email. She moved the mouse, saw the folder structure in the sidebar. Father_project_Q4_2025. She clicked it. 23 files inside. Ancestry D, NA _results. _Sterling_Prescott.pdf. Ronan _Delaney _profile _surveillance.docx. Board _bribery _Clifford _Harrington.pdf. Cross _capital _commitment _agreement.pdf. Legal _vulnerabilities _morality _clause.docx. Timeline _execute _November _1.xlsx. Vivian opened every file, read every email, every calculation Sterling had made about destroying his father for $1.2 billion. 90 minutes straight. She felt faint for half a second, hand on her belly, felt the baby kick, kept reading. She was 8 months pregnant with my grandchild and chose justice over comfort. I couldn't do that with 7 days. I held that invoice and chose my mother. Vivian held that laptop and chose truth. At 10:15 a.m., she made 3 cold decisions. First, back up the entire folder to USB drive. Delete the backup log. Return the laptop to exact position. Second, sign divorce papers before the gala. File with attorney. Don't tell Sterling. Let him find out publicly with no warning. Third, get the USB to Vernon Townsend at the plaza on November 1st, during cocktail hour, before Sterling's attack. She sat with her hand on her belly and whispered to the baby, "I won't let you grow up thinking this was okay." The baby kicked again. 10:43 a.m. The moment she decided. She also called Margaret Klein at the plaza, the event planner, asked if there was any way to add a private note to my place setting. Margaret said she'd find a way. Vivian made 3 decisions in 32 minutes that saved my company and cost her marriage. I didn't know any of this was happening. Hayes had 14 pages in a locked box. Vivian had a USB drive with Sterling's entire conspiracy, both trying to protect me, neither telling me directly. Because I'd made myself impossible to tell, too busy, too distracted, too committed to the comfortable lie. On October 23rd, 5 days after discovering her husband's plot, Vivian met with her attorney, signed divorce papers in a conference room overlooking Central Park, cited irreconcilable differences, requested sole custody with supervised visitation. Sterling didn't know. Vivian went home that afternoon and made him dinner. They talked about baby names. He put his hand on her belly and felt his child kick, smiled, told her he loved her. She smiled back, didn't mention the papers. Vivian arranged for service on November 1st, at the Plaza Hotel, during the gala. The server would hand Sterling the envelope at his table at exactly 9:45 p.m. The same moment Sterling was planning to expose my illegitimate son in front of 380 people. My son orchestrated my public destruction. His wife orchestrated his private one. Neither told their target in advance. At the plaza, we were both ambushed. My daughter-in-law signed divorce papers on October 23rd, 2025. My eldest son didn't know until the paper was placed on his table at the plaza on November 1st. For 30 years, I mourned a ghost. While 12 miles away, she taught piano to children and raised my son, both of us wearing half of the same broken watch. Vivian signed divorce papers on October 23rd. Sterling had no idea. But I had no idea about something bigger. The woman I'd mourned for 3 decades was alive in Brooklyn Heights, 12 miles from my Greenwich estate, living a life I knew nothing about. Simone Delaney changed her identity after September 1995. Not completely, she kept the surname Delaney, the one I'd known her by. But everything else disappeared. The jazz pianist from Bleecker Street vanished. In her place, a piano teacher at Brooklyn Heights School of Arts, $58,000 a year, 3rd-floor apartment at 17 Pierrepont Street. 32 square meters, 1 bedroom. Yamaha upright piano against the wall facing the window. Morning light through cotton curtains. Photos of Ronan, from infant to New York, Philharmonic violinist covering every surface. She raised him alone. Ronan asked about his father, the way all children ask. Age 7, 12, 1924. Different words, same question. Who is my father? Simone gave the same answer for 29 years. As someone who made a choice, that's all you need to know. She answered that question for 29 years. I didn't know the question existed. Simone believed I chose Celeste willingly. Chose the Prescott name over her, chose $800 million over love. She didn't know about Constance's threats, didn't know about the 4 men who attacked her, didn't know Hartwell faked her death, didn't know I spent 30 years visiting Trinity Cemetery, grave number 247 every September 14th at 3:42 a.m. She thought I walked away. I thought she was dead. Vernon knew both truths and kept them from both of us for 3 decades. But Vernon did more than keep secrets. He kept Simone alive. Starting October 1995, 1 month after the attack, Simone received an envelope in her mailbox every month. Always the same. White business envelope. No return address. Postmarked Atlanta. Inside $2,500 bills. $2,500 every month for 30 years. $900,000 total. The envelope came from AAA, Atlanta Financial Services, a company that didn't exist. A proxy Vernon created, money from his own inheritance. His grandfather had left him $2 million when he turned 21. Vernon spent nearly half of it keeping Simone alive, while I believed she was dead. Simone never knew the source. She assumed it was legal settlement from the September incident she couldn't remember clearly. The head injury from the attack had stolen 3 days of memory. She remembered August 1995, remembered being pregnant, remembered waking up in Lenox Hill Hospital September the 17th, with Vernon sitting beside her bed, saying he'd found her on Bleecker Street. She didn't remember the 4 masked men, didn't remember the attack, didn't remember nearly dying. The monthly envelope arrived like clockwork. She opened each one with the same question. From who? She asked that question for 30 years. Never found the answer until after the gala, when Vernon finally told her everything. He saved her twice. Once with his hands in September 1995, carrying her to his car, rushing her to Lenox Hill Hospital, refusing to let her die. Once with his money for 30 years, $900,000 in $100 bills mailed from a fake company in Atlanta. I spent 30 years wearing black ties on September 14th and achieved nothing. Vernon spent $900,000 and saved 2 lives, Simone's and Ronan's. But the envelope that came in October 2010, 15 years after the attack, 15 years before the gala, that the envelope contained something different. Simone opened it expecting cash, found half a watch instead. Vintage Cartier, black leather strap, gold buckle, broken. The leather torn where the clasp had been. The buckle bent. 1/2 of a watch I'd given her in September 1995, 2 weeks before I left her for the last time. She held it in her hands and cried for 3 days. She recognized it immediately. The watch I'd bought her after she told me she was afraid time was running out for us. I'd said time couldn't run out if we held on to it together. Romantic nonsense from a 26-year-old heir who thought money could solve everything. She'd been wearing it the night of September 14th when the 4 men attacked her. It broke in the struggle. Vernon found it on Bleecker Street split in half, leather-torn clasp separated. He kept both halves for 15 years. Then, in October 2010, he sent 1/2 to Simone in the monthly envelope. The other half he brought to me at the Greenwich estate, claiming he'd found it in storage during inventory. Thought you'd want this back, Vernon said. Found it in your father's desk. Old Cartier, broken clasp. I took it, stared at it, felt something break open in my chest. Where did this come from? I asked. Aim Estate Storage. Vernon lied. Been there years. I wore it every day for 15 years. A broken Cartier watch on my wrist. I thought it was metaphor for time stopping when she died. It was connection to the woman living 12 miles away. Poetry is wasted on the ignorant. Simone kept her half in the drawer by her bed. Took it out sometimes. Held it. Wondered who'd sent it and why. We were both wearing pieces of the same watch for 15 years. 12 miles apart. Neither knowing the other had the matching half. Neither knowing we were still connected by this broken thing Vernon had split between us. October 2018, 7 years before the gala, Simone saw my face on television. CNBC, third quarter earnings announcement. I was 49 years old, standing at a podium discussing Prescott Industries' growth projections. She was watching in her Brooklyn apartment. Muted, TV, October afternoon light. She stood at the window for 7 full minutes, hand on the screen, looking at my face. Ronan was 23. He came into the room carrying groceries. "Mom, what are you watching?" he asked. Simone turned the TV off. "Nothing important," she said. She saw my face, knew I was alive, successful, intact, and still said nothing to our son. Still chose silence over truth. Still believed I'd chosen my world over hers voluntarily. She kept that silence for 7 more years, until Barrett Finch approached Ronan at Penn Station in October 2025 and told him half the truth about his abandoning father. By then, it was too late to correct the lie with love. The truth came out as weapon instead. She kept half a Cartier watch strap for 15 years in a drawer by her bed. The other half I wore on my wrist every day. I had no idea we were still connected. On the night I was destroyed, I stood in the Plaza Hotel foyer, shaking 380 hands, and believed my family loved me. We wore matching halves of a broken watch for 15 years, Simone and I 12 miles apart. But on November 1st, 2025, at 7 p.m., I wasn't thinking about broken watches or parallel lives. I was standing in a tuxedo greeting guests for the Prescott Industries Centennial Gala, and everything appeared perfect. The Plaza Hotel Grand Foyer. Marble floors. Crystal chandeliers throwing light across 380 people in black tie. Celeste beside me in midnight blue Valentino. Constance on my other side, in champagne silk, 81 years old and radiant. Sterling Hayes Vivienne, moving through the crowd with champagne flutes and practiced smiles. I shook every hand, made every introduction, played the role I'd rehearsed for 56 years. The Forbes editor congratulated me on the Industry Leader Award. The New York Times publisher mentioned the feature story running Sunday. The Goldman Sachs chairman discussed fourth quarter projections. Everyone said the right things. I said the right things back. Veuve Clicquot, Vivaldi String Quartet, October roses and crystal vases on every surface. The kind of evening that costs $470,000 and looks effortless. I felt blessed. That's the word. Blessed. My company at its peak. My family intact. My mother's 81st birthday tribute planned for after dinner. The Prescott name secured for another generation. I felt blessed. 4 minutes later, a waiter would warn me. I wouldn't listen. That's the pattern of my life. Warnings ignored until too late. 7:42 p.m. I was standing near the champagne station. Brief pause between greeting the last arrival and moving to the ballroom for dinner. Adjusting my bow tie. Checking my watch, the broken Cartier. I wore every day without understanding why. A waiter approached. White serving jacket. Young, maybe 25. I didn't recognize him from the Plaza staff I'd worked with planning the event. He leaned close, whispered, "Sir, be careful tonight. Watch your eldest son." Then he vanished into the crowd before I could respond. I turned, looked for him, saw nothing but 380 guests in constant motion, black tie and champagne and conversation. I adjusted my bow tie again, muttered to myself, "Am I imagining things too much champagne on empty stomach?" Dismissed it. The way I dismissed the invoice in my mother's safe. The way I dismissed Hayes trying to tell me something important. The way I dismissed every warning for 30 years. Third warning in 2 weeks. The invoice. The intuition. The waiter. I ignored all 3. Vivienne had hired that waiter. Paid him $2,000 to deliver 1 sentence at 7:42 p.m. trying to save her father-in-law before her husband destroyed him. I didn't know that until 3 weeks later, sitting in Vernon's office learning about all the people who'd tried to protect me while I chose blindness. 8:30 p.m., dinner seating. The grand ballroom, 38 round tables, 32 crystal chandeliers, Rydal crystal place settings catching light. Every detail perfect because Margaret Klein had spent 6 weeks planning perfection. Table 1, Miss Celeste Constance Sterling, Hayes, Vivian 8 months pregnant in emerald evening gown. My family, together, the way families are supposed to be at centennial celebrations. Scattered through the other 37 tables, the conspiracies I didn't know existed. Table 4 had Clifford Harrington sitting beside Sebastian Cross, both smiling like old friends instead of bribery partners. Table 11 had Margot the reporter, who would write tomorrow's headline. Table 16 had Barrett Finch, the PR strategist who'd weaponized my biological son. Everyone playing their roles perfectly. 8:35 p.m. Clarence Garrett stood at the podium for opening remarks. Clarence had served as Prescott Industries' chief operating officer for 32 years and knew every story worth telling about the company's history. 60 years ago, Theodore Prescott Sr. opened one door in Brooklyn, Clarence said. Tonight we celebrate 6,000 doors across America. Applause. 380 people clapping for the legacy my father built and I'd maintained. 8:48 p.m. Pastor Philip delivered the blessing. Pastor Philip had baptized all 3 of my sons and presided over my father's funeral, the family's spiritual anchor, for 40 years. We thank the Lord for this family's commitment to industry integrity and community, Pastor Philip said. Integrity. Community. The words echoed across crystal and marble. I sat at table 1 looking at my whole family. My wife holding my hand, my mother beaming, my sons in matching tuxedos, my pregnant daughter-in-law glowing. Perfect, the word I kept thinking. Perfect. Poached salmon and filet mignon served on Limoges china. I barely tasted it. Too busy feeling grateful. Too busy believing in the surface. Before I tell you what happened when my son stood up, are you still here? Comment A, if he's exposing me to protect someone, or B, if this is pure ambition. Add one reason. Quick note. The next part includes fictionalized details to convey emotional impact. 9 p.m. The lights dimmed. 30-foot screen descended at the front of the ballroom. Video tribute began. Industry Leader Award presentation. Theodore Prescott Jr. Montage of company history. Factories, employees, growth charts, family photographs from 6 decades. My father cutting ribbon on the first Brooklyn location in 1965. Me at 26 taking over in 1995. Sterling at 15 receiving his first equity stake. The narrator's voice filled the ballroom. Theodore Prescott Jr. took the helm in 1995, navigating the company through 3 decades of unprecedented growth. Under his leadership, Prescott Industries expanded from regional presence to national prominence, creating 14,000 jobs and contributing $800 million to American manufacturing. Celeste squeezed my hand. Constance smiled. Sterling applauded. I sat there watching my life on a screen. 30 seconds later, my son would stand up, and I would learn what legacy really costs. You can see it coming. I couldn't. That's the difference between watching a life and living one. The video played. My face at 26, at 35, at 42, at 50, at 56. 30 years compressed into 4 minutes of achievement and accolades. 380 guests watching, applauding at the right moments, smiling at the family photos, believing the narrative. I thanked every person in my mind as they entered earlier that evening. 380 guests, 380 handshakes, 380 moments of connection. I didn't know one of them had a small USB drive hidden in a wallet waiting for the right moment. The highest moment of my life lasted exactly 30 seconds, the time it took me to stand up and lift my foot toward glory before my son destroyed me. One of 380 guests had a USB drive hidden in a wallet, but at 9 p.m. on November 1st, I wasn't thinking about hidden drives or conspiracies. I was watching my life on a 30-foot screen and feeling grateful. The tribute video played. 14 minutes of Prescott Industries history compressed into montage. Factories, employees, growth charts. My father in 1965, cutting ribbon on the first Brooklyn location. Me at 26 taking over in 1995. The company expanding from regional presence to national prominence. Minutes 6 through 10 focused on my mother. Constance Prescott filled the screen. Age 81, dignified in archive footage from 4 decades. The narrator's voice amplified across crystal and marble. Constance Prescott, the Iron Lady, who kept this family's vision alive through 4 decades of change. When markets crashed, when competition threatened, when the easy choice was to sell, Constance stood firm. The strength behind Prescott Industries' endurance. Constance sat beside me at table 1, nodding, self-satisfied, accepting the celebration she believed she had earned. I reached over, squeezed her hand. "Mum," I whispered, "you held us together, through everything." She smiled, patted my hand, said nothing, watched herself celebrated on screen. I watched my mother glorified for strength. I didn't know what that strength had destroyed, didn't know about the 4 men she'd sent to Bleecker Street in September 1995, didn't know about the $185,000 she'd paid Hartwell to fake a death and bury the evidence. I saw an Iron Lady. I should have seen a criminal. 380 people applauded the woman who'd ordered a murder. I applauded loudest. Celeste held my other hand, squeezed gently. I glanced at her. She smiled. Proud wife supporting her husband's big night. I didn't know her sister Colleen had coordinated the attack. Didn't know Celeste had signed off on every detail. I held hands with 2 women who'd tried to kill the mother of my biological son, and I felt blessed. Vivienne checked her Patek Philippe watch. 9:14 p.m. She knew what was coming, knew her husband would stand in 16 minutes and destroy his father publicly, knew she'd already signed divorce papers that would be served during the attack. She sat there 8 months pregnant carrying my grandchild and waited for the collision she couldn't stop. The video continued. My face at 30, at 40, at 50, at 56. 30 years of achievement. 14,000 jobs created. $800 million contributed to American manufacturing. The legacy my father started and I'd expanded. The narrator praised my long-term vision, my commitment to American industry, my dedication to family values. Family values. The phrase echoed across the ballroom while I held hands with my mother who'd ordered a killing and my wife who'd helped execute it. 9:15 p.m. The video ended. Lights stayed dim. Brahms' quartet playing softly. Transition moment before the award presentation. Vivienne stood, whispered to the table. "Restroom, be right back." Nobody questioned it. 8 months pregnant, frequent bathroom breaks expected. She moved carefully between tables toward the west exit. While I watched my face on a screen being celebrated for 30 years of leadership, my daughter-in-law handed my assistant the weapon that would save me. I noticed neither transaction. I was too busy feeling grateful. Vivienne found Vernon near the west corner, thrust something into his hand, small USB drive, folded paper, her whisper urgent. All my husband's laptop files, Clifford's contract, ancestry DNA, distribute when needed. Vernon's hands trembled, eyes wide. He muttered, "Hey, what do you know?" Vivienne's voice steady, despite her shoulders shaking beneath Oscar de la Renta emerald silk. "Enough to know I married the wrong man. I have his child. I want my child not to grow up with a father like him. Vernon, you know what to do." She turned away, walked back to table 1, steps steady, face composed, sat down beside her husband who would destroy me in 15 minutes. Sterling leaned over, whispered something. She smiled, nodded, betrayed nothing. Vernon stood frozen for 7 seconds, holding the USB drive. Then he moved to the back corner, sat down, opened his phone, started reviewing the files Vivienne had copied from Sterling's laptop. All of this happened while I sat at table 1 feeling proud, watching the screen fade to black, waiting for my moment. 9:30 p.m. exactly. Clarence Garrett walked to the stage, stood behind the walnut podium with gold Prescott logo, adjusted the microphone, looked out at 380 guests. "Ladies and gentlemen," Clarence said, "it is my honor tonight to present the Industry Leader of the Year award." Applause started, polite, expected. Clarence continued, "This year's recipient has led Prescott Industries for 3 decades with vision, integrity, and unwavering commitment to American manufacturing. Under his leadership, the company has grown to a valuation of $2.4 billion, creating thousands of jobs and strengthening communities across this nation." The applause built, people starting to stand, champagne glasses raised. And Theodore Prescott Jr., 30 years of service to America. Please join me in honoring tonight's Industry Leader of the Year. Standing ovation, all 380 guests on their feet. Applause filling the crystal ballroom, the sound washing over me like vindication. I stood, emotions flooding, pride, gratitude, validation. Everything I'd worked for condensed into this moment. Celeste stood beside me, kissed my cheek, whispered, "I'm so proud of you." Constance nodded approval, her 81-year-old face beaming, the Iron Lady watching her son receive the crown she'd helped him build. Hayes applauded from my left. Hayes who'd tried to warn me twice. Hayes who had 14 pages of evidence in a locked box that could have stopped everything if I'd listened. Vivienne applauded, hands steady, despite knowing her husband was about to detonate everything. Sterling applauded, smiled, played the proud eldest son perfectly. Nobody saw the secondary microphone Barrett had positioned at his place, setting during dinner service. 30 seconds of applause, 380 people standing for me. I thought it was the sound of respect. It was the sound of 380 people who had no idea what was about to happen. Neither did I. You can see it coming. I couldn't. That's tragedy. I looked at Celeste, at Constance, at my 3 sons, at Vivienne carrying my grandchild, my family. Together, perfect. This is it, I thought. Everything I worked for. Dad, I did it. I lifted my foot off the floor to take the first step toward the stage, toward Clarence waiting at the podium, toward the Industry Leader Award, toward the highest moment of my 56-year life. In that exact instant, my eldest son stood at table 1 holding a secondary microphone, and everything changed. My son stood up in front of 380 people and destroyed my life in 3 minutes using a microphone, a laptop, and 1 photograph. I lifted my foot off the floor to walk toward the stage, toward Clarence, toward the Industry Leader Award, toward glory. Sterling stood at table 1 holding a secondary microphone. His voice boomed through the ballroom speakers. "Theodore, I'm sorry. Before my father receives this award, there's something our whole family needs to know, and everyone here should know too, because transparency is Prescott's #1 value." I froze, foot suspended mid-step. My brain couldn't process movement, couldn't understand why my son was speaking, why he had a microphone, why the standing ovation was fading to confused silence. Constance hissed from beside me, "Sterling, sit down now." Her voice sharp enough to cut crystal. The command she'd used on all 3 of my sons for 3 decades. The voice that meant immediate obedience or severe consequences. Sterling didn't sit. Celeste leaned forward, urgent whisper loud enough for table 1 to hear. "Sterling, this is not the time." Sterling looked at his mother, smiled, cold, calculated. Mom, you always say transparency is important, so I'll be transparent right now." He turned to face the ballroom. 380 guests still standing from the ovation, confused, uncertain whether to sit or keep standing, caught in the moment between celebration and disaster. Sterling opened his laptop, connected to the ballroom projection system. The 30-foot screen that had just shown my life's achievements went black for 2 seconds, then filled with documents. Ancestry DNA results, large text across the top, clinical, official, undeniable. Test subject Sterling James Prescott. Date, September the 17th, 2025. Ethnicity estimate 94% Western European. DNA matches 1 close family match. Below that, relationship half-brother, shared. DNA, 1,847 centimorgans. Confidence level, 99.97%. Name Ronan Delaney. The screen changed. Photograph filled the display. Young man, 29 years old, black concert attire, violin in hand, slight smile, professional headshot from the New York Philharmonic website. Text below the photo, Ronan Delaney, born March 1996. Sterling's voice amplified across crystal and marble, and 380 frozen people. This is my father's biological child, with a woman named Simone Delaney. My father has kept this secret for 30 years. The ballroom inhaled collectively. 380 people gasping the same syllable. Oh, press photographers raised cameras, shutters clicking, flashbulbs exploding. The story shifting in real time from celebration to scandal. I stared at the screen, at the photograph, at the young man I'd never met. 4 seconds. That's how long I looked at that face. The nose, that distinctive shape, slightly crooked. I'd seen it in archive photographs of my great-grandfather, Richard Alexander Whitmore, the man who'd built the foundation fortune in 1920. That specific angle, that exact bridge. The eyes, hazel green, the same eyes I'd looked at in the mirror every morning for 56 years. My mother's eyes, my grandfather's eyes, Prescott eyes going back 4 generations. The smile, slight, reserved, The way I smiled in photographs when I was young and didn't know how to perform joy for cameras. That face, that nose, those eyes. If that's my son, then she's not dead. Simone. Oh God. She's not dead. 4 seconds. That's how long it took me to understand that 30 years of grief had been unnecessary. 30 years of September 14th cemetery visits at 3:42 a.m. 30 years of mourning a ghost who was alive 12 miles away in Brooklyn Heights. My hand trembled. The Dom Perignon glass I'd been holding started shaking in my grip, champagne sloshing. Sterling continued, his voice steady, rehearsed, every word planned. Ancestry DNA doesn't lie. The science is clear. My father had a relationship with Simone Delaney in 1995. She was 24. He was 26. She became pregnant. He married my mother instead. Constance's face flushed red, then drained to deathly pale in 2 seconds. Her fingers gripped the silk napkin white-knuckled. She looked at me, then at Sterling, then at the screen, calculating. Celeste's hands trembled. She knocked her wine glass. Bordeaux spilled across her $14,000 emerald Cartier dress, red stains spreading like blood across silk. She whispered, broken, not quite to herself. Impossible. She's dead. I saw... She stopped, hand over mouth, realizing what she'd said, what she'd revealed. I didn't hear her clearly in that moment. The retrospective transcripts from the press recordings showed me later what my wife had whispered, the slip of tongue that exposed everything. But in that instant, I heard one word clearly. Sterling pronounced it into the microphone, full volume, every syllable distinct. Simone Delaney. I jumped to my feet, body moving before brain could think, slammed my hand down on the table. The gold tableware bounced 4 inches, Riedel crystal jumping. The Dom Perignon glass shattered on the plaza carpet, eyes bloodshot, tears streaming down my face, soaking into the Brioni tuxedo, hands shaking. I screamed, hoarse, raw, the sound of 30 years of grief colliding with desperate hope. Yijika, she's alive, tell me, is she alive? The ballroom went silent. 380 people frozen, press cameras capturing everything. My emotional breakdown broadcast in real time. Sterling stared at me, his confident script faltering, confusion crossing his face. Wait, what do you mean, Dad? She's dead, isn't she? I grabbed his shoulders, shook him. Is she alive? Answer me. Is Simone alive? Sterling's face drained of color, his eyes widening, the realization hitting him like physical impact. He'd thought I knew, thought I'd abandoned Simone and Ronan voluntarily, thought I'd hidden my biological son for 30 years out of shame or greed or cowardice. He'd built his entire attack on that premise. And the premise was wrong. I'd believed Simone was dead for 30 years, mourned her, visited her grave, wore the broken watch thinking it symbolized time stopping. Sterling had just told me she was alive. His attack wasn't exposing my lie. It was revealing the truth I'd never known. Sterling looked at the 380 people, at the press cameras, at the evidence on the 30-foot screen, at his grandmother Constance sitting rigid with fear, at his mother, Celeste with wine staining her dress and panic in her eyes. He couldn't stop now. The door was open. The truth was out. The cameras were rolling. In that moment, my eldest son realized he was wrong. But he couldn't stop. Because 380 people were watching. Press filming. And truth had just opened a door no one could close. The moment my mother threatened to disown my son was the moment I understood she had been threatening people I loved for 30 years. Sterling realized his mistake, but the door was open. 380 people watching, press cameras rolling, truth cascading. The Vivaldi quartet stopped mid-measure, instruments freezing, sudden silence louder than music. Margot stood at table 11, New York Times reporter, camera raised. Plaza staff rushed toward table 1 to clean the shattered glass at my feet. Constance rose abruptly, chair scraping marble, face draining from red to deathly pale, white-knuckled grip on the table edge. Her voice cut across the ballroom, steel, command. Sterling, enough, sit down now. Sterling looked at her, microphone still in hand, mouth opening. Then, Mother, I have to make this clear. Constance interrupted, cold, precise. Don't. One more word and you're no longer a Prescott. The ballroom inhaled. 380 people hearing a grandmother threaten to disown her grandson. Power weaponized. Fear disguised as authority. Sterling's hand trembled. The microphone slipped, fell, screeched across marble. He sat down, slowly, face pale. Celeste covered her mouth with both hands, sobbing. Red wine still staining her emerald dress. mascara running black streaks. I remained standing, glass shattered at my feet, eyes locked on my mother. "Mother," I said, voice hoarse. "What did you just say to me? She's not dead." Constance looked at me, then looked away. Wouldn't meet my eyes. That's when I understood. I looked at my mother threatening my son, and saw the pattern. The invoice in her safe, $185,000 to Hartwell. Simone Delaney Matter. The waiter's warning I'd dismissed. Watch your eldest son. Vernon's odd silences whenever I mentioned Simone. His face every September 14th when I left for the cemetery. Hayes trying to tell me something important. Twice. Me saying after the gala. She was the center. She was the weapon. She'd been threatening people I loved for 30 years, and I'd been too blind to see it. My mother. The Iron Lady celebrated 15 minutes ago for keeping our family strong. She'd kept us strong by threatening to destroy anyone who weakened her control. I opened my mouth to speak, but Vernon moved. 6 steps. I counted every one. He walked from the west corner where he'd been standing, where Vivian had handed him the USB drive 20 minutes earlier, where he'd been waiting. Deciding. 75 years old, silver hair, black formal jacket, white tie, arms crossed over his stomach, holding something. 380 guests turned, watching him walk, slow, deliberate, each step measured. His voice cracked. 30 years of emotion breaking through. "Enough, Sterling. You don't know what you're saying." He kept walking toward the center of the ballroom floor. "Mr. Theodore, I should have said this sooner, 30 years ago." Constance gripped the table edge. "Vernon, sit down now. You have no right." Vernon didn't stop, kept walking those measured steps. In his hands, a small USB drive, a yellowed paper envelope, a 4-page typed list, 30 years of evidence. Margot quietly raised her phone, recording. This wasn't family drama anymore. This was history. Tomorrow's New York Times front page. I watched my mother's face. Pure panic. Control slipping through white-knuckled fingers. Vernon reached the center of the ballroom floor, stopped, turned to face me, to face 380 guests. He raised the USB drive and yellowed envelope. Evidence held high. His voice steady now. Resolution. Liberation. "Madam, I kept silent for 30 years because you threatened to kill her if I spoke." The ballroom went completely still. No breath, no movement. Vernon continued. "I kept quiet. She lived, and tonight I cannot keep quiet anymore. Kill her. My mother. Vernon, 30 years. I couldn't breathe. Constance's voice sharp, desperate. "That's a lie." Vernon looked at her. 40 years of loyal service ending in this moment. "No, madam, it's not." He turned back to me, held out the yellowed envelope, hands trembling from release. "September 14th, 1995. You asked me to drive you to Bleecker Street to see Miss Simone. I told you she'd gone to visit family in New Jersey. You believe me." My legs went weak. I grabbed the table. "The truth," Vernon said, "is that I'd found her 3 hours earlier. 4 men had attacked her. She was bleeding, pregnant, dying. I took her to Lenox Hill Hospital, saved her life, then hid her from everyone, from you, from the men your mother sent." Celeste gasped, covered her face. Constance stood rigid, silent, trapped. Vernon's voice broke. "Your mother told me if I ever spoke a word about Miss Simone being alive, she would finish what those 4 men started, so I stayed silent. Sent money every month from my inheritance, kept her hidden in Brooklyn, protected her the only way I could." He looked at the USB drive. "And tonight your daughter-in-law gave me evidence of what your eldest son was planning, so I decided. 30 years was long enough." 380 people, complete silence. I looked at Vernon, the man who'd been my family's butler for 40 years, who'd served my father, who'd taught me to tie a bow tie when I was 7, who'd driven me to my wedding, who'd held my sons when they were born. The man I'd called Vernon, never knowing his full name, never asking about his life, never seeing him as more than loyal servant. He'd waited 30 years for these 30 seconds, and I never knew. I heard my mother's voice through the plaza ballroom speakers ordering violence against the woman I loved, and in that moment understood evil wears pearls and speaks with perfect diction. Vernon had waited 30 years for these 30 seconds. Now he walked to the podium carrying the USB drive, 380 guests silent, watching. I stood at table 1, waiting for evidence, waiting for proof of what my butler had just confessed. Vernon connected the USB to the laptop, his fingers steady despite everything. 4 decades of butler training. Precision under pressure. The ballroom speakers crackled, then voices. Recorded audio, September 1995. 30 years old, but crystal clear. A woman's voice first. Young, uncertain, trying to sound confident. We're just teaching her a lesson. I recognized it immediately. Celeste, age 25, my fiancée. The woman I would marry 1 month later. Then my mother's voice. No uncertainty, command, authority. The same tone she used ordering dinner menus or firing staff. Make sure she loses it. I don't care how. The Prescott name comes first. The recording continued 47 seconds. Background noise, movement, someone's pocket. The bodyguard had accidentally left his phone recording. Documented the entire conspiracy by accident. Preserved for 30 years. Now playing through Plaza Hotel ballroom speakers for 380 people. I heard my mother's voice ordering violence. The same voice that had read me bedtime stories when I was 7. That had congratulated me at my Columbia graduation. That had held my sons when they were born. That voice, commanding someone to make Simone lose the baby. My legs went weak. I grabbed the table edge. The recording ended. Silence crashed across the ballroom harder than any sound. 380 people staring at Constance Prescott, the Iron Lady. The matriarch celebrated 15 minutes ago for keeping the family strong. Constance collapsed into her Louis XVI chair, for the first time in 60 years, unable to stand straight. Shoulders trembling, hands covering her face. 8-carat diamond ring clinking against the chair arm. Her voice a trembling whisper. That's fake. 5 seconds of silence. Then her hands dropped. She sat up straight, voice hardening. Cold, precise. I did it all for this family. Prescott must survive. No apology, no remorse, justification. As if ordering an attack on a pregnant woman was equivalent to firing an incompetent employee. I turned sharply to look at her, tears welling in my eyes, my shoulders slumped. I felt 80 years old, not 56. Mom, why did you do this to me? I'm your son. She met my eyes, didn't flinch, repeated the same cold phrase. I did it for family. She looked at me crying and felt nothing. I was 56 years old and learning my mother didn't love me. She loved the name, the legacy, the brand. I was just the carrier, replaceable if necessary. Vernon pulled out the 4-page typed list, held it up, began reading. 4 bodyguards hired September 1995. Payment $50,000 cash. Contact person Colleen Ashford's sister. Colleen sat at table 2. Celeste's younger sister, age 48, face turning deathly pale. She pushed her chair back. The screech across marble cutting through silence. Pulled off her red Louboutin heels. Both of them, tossed them aside. Ran toward the exit in stockings. $800 evening gown and bare feet. Crashed through the double doors onto 5th Avenue. 9:39 p.m. on a Saturday night. Margot chased her. New York Times reporter. Phone raised, camera clicking. 12 photos of a woman fleeing in stockings. Celeste stood, reached toward her sister, voice breaking. Colleen. But Colleen didn't stop, didn't look back, just ran. The red Louboutin heels remained on white marble, empty, abandoned. That's the image that made the New York Times front page the next morning. Not the recording, not the confession, the shoes. Because sometimes flight tells the truth louder than words. Vernon turned to Celeste at table 1, still holding the 4-page list, his voice calm, professional, the butler asking a simple question. Mrs. Prescott, do you want me to read the 5th name? Seacrest. Celeste's face drained of all color, panic flooding her eyes. She opened her mouth, reflexive defense, words spilling out before thinking. I only told them to teach her a lesson, not... She stopped, mid-sentence, hand flying to cover her mouth, eyes going wide with horror, realizing what she just said, confessed, in front of 380 people, in front of press cameras, in front of her husband standing 3 feet away. She'd tried to defend herself and accidentally admitted conspiracy. Choked sobs trapped in her throat, both hands over her mouth now. Too late to stop the words. She confessed trying to defend herself. That's how truth works. It doesn't wait for permission. I stood there, staring at my wife, the woman I'd been married to for 30 years, the mother of my 3 sons, the woman who'd held my hand through my father's funeral, who'd celebrated every business success, who'd shared my bed for 3 decades. She'd ordered an attack on Simone, been part of the conspiracy that stole 30 years of my life. And I'd never known. Slept beside her 10,000 nights. Never suspected. 380 guests sat in stunned silence. Margot's phone still recording. Vernon still standing at the podium, holding evidence. My mother sitting rigid in her chair, no remorse in her eyes, just cold calculation about damage control. My wife sobbing with her hands over her mouth. Confession already escaped, can't take words back once spoken. My sister-in-law fled onto Fifth Avenue in stockings, red heels abandoned on marble like evidence at a crime scene. Everything I'd believed about my family, about my life, about the past 30 years, all of it lies. Built on a foundation of violence I never knew happened. 380 guests heard my wife's confession. Press recorded every word. In 90 minutes, the New York Times would publish. In 12 minutes, my mother would cling to the table edge, unable to stand straight anymore. I wiped my tears with my great-grandfather's handkerchief and activated a clause written in 1965 that suspended my son in front of 380 people. My mother ordered the attack. My wife confessed conspiracy. My sister-in-law fled in stockings. All exposed, all recorded. New York Times publishing in 90 minutes. I pulled the handkerchief from my pocket. White linen, embroidered in the corner raw. Richard Alexander Whitmore I, my great-grandfather. The man who built the foundation fortune in 1920. Wiped my face. Took 8 steps to the main podium. Voice cracked but firm. I activate Founder's Emergency Clause, written by my great-grandfather Richard Whitmore I in 1965. Right here, right now. Quorum check, 11 of 15 board members present. Clarence stood from his seat, voice steady. Quorum confirmed. I gripped the podium. Vote 1, suspend Sterling Prescott as Senior Vice President and Clifford Harrington as board member due to conspiracy for hostile takeover. Raise hands if you agree. 9 hands rose simultaneously. 2 remained down, Clifford and 1 ally. 9 in favor, 2 against. Motion passed. Sterling turned pale, stood, voice desperate. I father you can, I am your blood. I looked at him, my eldest son, 29 years old, the boy I'd taught to tie his shoes, to ride a bike, to play chess, to sacrifice the king if necessary. You are my blood, I said, but blood is not property. Property is legacy, and you sold your legacy. I stepped down from the stage, 4 steps toward the east door. Ronan stood there, 4 meters away, 29 years old, black violinist jacket, face pale, confused. Barrett had invited him tonight to be Sterling's weapon, to expose me publicly. Instead, he just learned his father didn't abandon him. His mother wasn't alone by choice. 30 years of grief based on lies Barrett told him at Penn Station 6 weeks ago. I shouted across the Plaza Grand ballroom, voice breaking, not caring about dignity anymore. Son, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I didn't know you existed 30 years. I reached him, embraced him with both arms, tears soaking into his violinist jacket. Ronan's hands stiffened. 3 seconds. Processing. Then his body broke. Pressed his face against my Brioni tuxedo chest, shoulders trembling, hands gripping my back, intermittent sobs. The father, Dad, Mom thought you left us. I know, I choked. I know, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I held my son, the son I never knew I had, the child stolen from me by violence and lies. 29 years of his life I'd missed. First words, first steps, graduations, everything. Gone, but he was here now, alive, real, in my arms. Celeste fainted, head tilting right, body collapsing into her chair. Plaza servants rushed over, white gloves, precise movements. Constance wheezing, clinging to the table edge, unable to stand. The Iron Lady reduced to gripping furniture for support. Margot taking photographs, 47 in 90 seconds. Phone raised, camera clicking. Tomorrow's front page being documented in real time. Barrett stood at table 16, hand on his own forehead, face pale, realizing. I brought him here for this, not destruction. He'd manipulated Ronan, told him half-truths, weaponized his grief, brought him to the plaza to destroy me. Instead, Ronan found his father. Hayes stood where our mother had fainted, didn't bend to help, just stared down, voice cold. Mom, I lived with you 30 years. Who are you? No answer, just servants lifting Celeste, carrying her toward the emergency exit, unconscious. No one in that room didn't cry, except 2 people, my mother and my wife. Plaza staff carried Celeste out through the emergency exit, gone. Vivienne approached Clarence, 8 months pregnant, holding a 14-page document. Copy of the commitment Sterling and Clifford had signed with Sebastian Cross on September 3rd. Clarence glanced at it. 30 seconds. Expression shifting from neutral to cold. Clifford, did you sign this with Sterling? Clifford's hand went to his chest. Defensive. That Theodore? That was just a draft? Clarence cut him off. This document bears your and Sterling's signatures, witnessed by Cross Capital Partners, September 3rd. You are suspended on the spot. Sterling, suspended on the spot. Both of you leave in 10 minutes. Sebastian Cross stood at table 4, silent. Walked toward the exit. Didn't say a word. Just left. Clarence tapped a crystal glass with a silver knife, the sound cutting through the ballroom. Emergency board meeting, 11 p.m., Sunday at Prescott Tower. All 15 board members, mandatory attendance. Vivienne walked directly to Sterling at table 1, placed papers on the table in front of him. Divorce papers. Signed 2 weeks ago. Her voice quiet, steady. I signed these 2 weeks ago, when I found your file. Sterling stared at the papers, then at his wife, then at the papers again. Wife gone. Position gone. Alley gone. $1.2 billion gone. Reputation destroyed. Everything. In 18 minutes, I stood in the center of the ballroom, Ronan still in my arms, my biological son. The child I'd mourned without knowing he existed. Sterling at table 1, staring at divorce papers. My legal son. The child I'd raised who just tried to destroy me. Constance clinging to her chair. My mother. The woman who'd ordered violence. Celesta carried out unconscious. My wife. The woman who'd participated in conspiracy. Justice converging, fairness and consequence meeting simultaneously. My eldest son lost everything in 18 minutes. Wife position, $1.2 billion in stock reputation, only ally. I thought it was the end of the night. I was wrong. The night was not over. The night I was destroyed became the most read story in America. By morning, and somewhere between the Plaza and Brooklyn, I stopped being a CEO and became just a father looking for the woman I never stopped loving. I thought the night was over. Sterling lost everything. Justice served. But the night continued. 11:42 p.m. Margot published the New York Times article online. Headline: Prescott Centennial, Gala, becomes public reckoning, 30-year family conspiracy exposed. Photo me holding Ronan, both of us crying. The article went viral. 100,000 views in 90 minutes. Private family scandal becoming global public story overnight. The Plaza Grand Ballroom emptied slowly. Midnight to 1:14 a.m. 380 guests filing out, whispering, staring. Some approached to say something. I don't remember what. I was numb. I left through the back door on 5th Avenue. 1:14 a.m. November 2nd. Sunday morning. Vernon waited with the Cadillac Escalade. Black, engine running. Ronan climbed in the back seat, silent, still processing everything. Barrett Finch approached the car, face pale, voice breaking. Please, let me come. I need to apologize to him, to Ronan. I looked at Ronan. He nodded. Barrett got in. I sat in the front passenger seat, exhausted, destroyed, but feeling something else too. Liberation, anxiety, hope. I looked at Vernon. Vernon, take me to her. He nodded. Put the car in drive. We pulled away from the Plaza Hotel. Manhattan streets empty at night. Yellow lights on Park Avenue, the city that never sleeps sleeping. We drove in silence, 20 minutes, heading toward Brooklyn Bridge. 1:23 a.m., the Cadillac crossing the bridge, yellow lights reflecting on the East River below. Dark water, November, cold. Ronan dozed in the back seat, Barrett staring out the window, silent. Vernon drove with one hand on the steering wheel, reached into his shirt pocket with the other, pulled out a yellowed envelope. 30 years old. Placed it in my hand. His voice cracked. 30 years of emotion. Young master, this is a letter Simone wrote you before she left September 17th, 1995. I should have given it to you 30 years ago. Grandmother threatened to kill her if I gave it. I kept it because I was afraid. I stared at the envelope. Yellowed paper. Aged. Brittle. My hands trembled. I opened it under the dashboard glow. Slanted handwriting. Simone's. From 1995. Faded but readable. Richard, I don't blame you. I just wish you'd come find me once. But I understand your family too big, I too small. Be happy. I will keep the child. And I will never tell anyone about you so the child won't be hurt by not having a father. Richard, the fake name I'd used when I first met her, hiding my Prescott identity for 8 months before revealing the truth on Coney Island, she'd written to Richard, not Theodore. Because Richard was the man she'd fallen in love with. The man who'd taken her to jazz clubs and kissed her in September rain. Before wealth and family and legacy complicated everything. I read it again, slower. She didn't blame me. 30 years of grief and guilt. And she didn't blame me. She thought I chose them over her. She thought I was happy. While I mourned her death every September 14th at 3:42 a.m. for 3 decades. We were both wrong and both alone. I finished reading, looked at Vernon, rage and grief exploding, slammed my hand on the car window, shouted, "Vernon, why didn't you bring me sooner? 30 years I could have found her. When does he send westward?" Vernon's hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white. The car swerved slightly, then steadied, his voice breaking. "Master, I'm sorry. I was afraid she would die. I chose to let her live." I collapsed back in the seat, tears streaming. 30 years. 30 years I could have known my son. Could have been with the woman I loved. Could have lived a real life instead of the lie I'd been performing. 30 years stolen by violence and threats and fear. I cried. 4 minutes straight. The car driving through empty Brooklyn streets. Silent, except for my sobs. Ronan woke in the back seat, opened his eyes, watched me crying, said nothing. Just witnessed his father breaking. My son watched from the back seat while I cried for 4 minutes. He'd just met me 3 hours ago. Now he was watching me break. He didn't try to stop me. He didn't speak. He just witnessed. Maybe that's what sons do. They witness their fathers becoming human. Vernon drove. Barrett stared out the window. Ronan watched. I cried until there were no more tears. Then I read the letter again. Second time I saw, "I will keep the child." Third time I saw, "Be happy." Fourth time I saw, "I don't blame you." Fifth time I saw, "Your family too big, I too small." Sixth time I saw, "I just wish you'd come find me once." Seventh time I understood she loved me enough to let me go. She thought I chose wealth over love. She thought I was happy with Celeste and my empire and my legacy. She thought she was protecting our son from the pain of an absent father. And I thought she was dead, buried in Trinity Cemetery, Plot 2, 47, gone forever. We were both prisoners of the same lie, just in different cells. The car drove through Brooklyn Heights, quiet residential streets, old brownstones, trees, November leaves on sidewalks. 1:46 a.m. Vernon stopped the car, turned off the engine. 17 Pierrepont Street, he said quietly. 3rd floor, apartment 3C. I looked at the building, 5 stories, brick, lights off except one window on the 3rd floor. She was in there, alive, real. 30 years I'd believed she was dead. And she was 12 miles away teaching piano and raising our son. I read that letter 7 times in the car. Each time I added a word I hadn't seen. When the car stopped at 17 Pierrepont Street, Brooklyn, at 1:46 a.m., I was no longer the man who left the plaza. I knelt on a $40 welcome mat in a wrinkled tuxedo worth $4,000 and begged the woman I loved for 30 years to let me atone for mistakes I didn't make. 1:47 a.m. The car stopped. I stepped out. Walked to the navy blue door, marked 3, 3rd floor, 17 Pierrepont Street, Brooklyn Heights. My fingers trembled. I knocked. 30 seconds, no answer, then footsteps. Light. Careful. The door opened. Simone, 54 years old, gray hair at the temples, same eyes from when she was 24, but wrinkles at the corners, red flannel house dress, standing in the doorway looking at me. We stared at each other. 30 seconds, neither speaking, just looking. She was alive, real, not a ghost, not a memory, not a photograph in my mind from 1995. Alive. I dropped to my knees, right there on the jute welcome carpet, $40. Rough under my knees, wrinkled Brioni tuxedo, $4,000. 56-year-old CEO of a company worth $2.4 billion kneeling on cheap carpet. Hands trembling on my thighs, voice breaking. Simone, I beg you, 30 years, I didn't leave you. They tricked me thinking you were dead. I placed flowers for you every September 14th at a fake tombstone I didn't know about. You're allowed to be angry at me for the rest of your life. But don't close the door. Let me atone for my mistakes, even if just for one day. Her hands trembled, gripped the door frame, knees weak. She stared down at me kneeling, speechless. 30 seconds. Then she broke. And Theodore, I believed you chose her. For 30 years I taught our child not to ask about his father. I thought you'd forgotten me. Tears streaming down her face, voice cracking on every word. I never forgot you, I said. Not one day, not 1 hour. I mourned you every September 14th at 3:42 a.m. for 30 years. I was alive, she whispered, 12 miles away, teaching piano, raising our son, and you didn't know. I didn't know, I choked. They told me you died, car accident. I believed them. She sank against the doorframe, hand over her mouth, processing. A voice from inside the apartment. Ronan, taking a step forward. Mom's is this, Dad. Simone nodded through tears, pulled me to my feet from my kneeling position, hugged my trembling shoulders, then stretched her hand toward Ronan inside, pulling him toward us, all three of us. Together. Door frame of a Brooklyn apartment at 1:48 a.m. on a Sunday morning. Vernon stood on the sidewalk 5 meters away, clutching his fedora, watching. A single tear rolled down his cheek. I saw it, one tear. The first time Vernon had cried in 75 years. Vernon cried once in 75 years. I saw it. September 14th, 1995. He saved her life. November 2nd, 2025, he watched me beg for forgiveness. Both times one tear. That's all Vernon ever gave the world. It was enough. Simone pulled us inside, all three, me, her, Ronan. The door closed behind us. Family reunited after 30 years. 8:14 a.m., Sunday morning. Knock on the door. I opened it. Barrett stood there, 28 years old, wrinkled shirt, awake all night, holding an 80-page manila folder. He dropped to his knees in the doorway. Father, this is evidence. Sterling forced me to approach your biological son first. I thought I was exposing him for justice because I believed you abandoned Mom. I signed on to part of the plan without knowing. Please read it, he has my signature. I deserve to be suspended along with him. I apologize for not asking you first. I sat down with him in the doorway, hugged him tightly. You don't need to apologize. Sterling deceived you too. Get up. I need you by my side, not at my feet. Ronan stepped out from the apartment, placed his hand on Barrett's shoulder. Brother, thank you for coming to find me. Even if the reason was wrong, I don't hate you. Barrett looked up at Ronan, at me, tears in his eyes. Forgiveness given, second chance offered, family expanding. 2 p.m. Sunday afternoon, FBI raid in Yonkers. Vernon had given them the bodyguard's address and the 1995 recording after the gala. They arrested him. 58 years old, former bodyguard who'd attacked Simone 30 years ago. Interrogation room. Facing 25 years in prison for conspiracy assault. He accepted a plea deal, revealed the entire chain. Hired by Colleen Ashford, Celeste's sister. Paid $80,000 in 1995 by Celeste. Orders from Constance make sure she loses it. Helen, an associate attorney at Hartwell's firm, who specialized in expediting criminal proceedings against white-collar conspirators, appeared representing me to fast-track the legal process. Within 48 hours after the gala, Constance Prescott criminally charged. Conspiracy to commit assault. Conspiracy to commit murder of an unborn child. Celeste Prescott charged as principal. Accessory to assault. Accessory to conspiracy. Colleen Ashford charged as accomplice. Fled the jurisdiction, but arrested Monday morning at JFK Airport attempting to board a flight to London. All three facing years in prison. All three conspirators who'd ordered violence in September 1995. All three who'd stolen 30 years of my life. All three who'd tried to kill my unborn son. Justice converging. I sat in Simone's apartment Sunday evening, exhausted, destroyed, but whole for the first time in 30 years. Ronan played violin, Bach's chaconne, complex, profound, beautiful. They killed an unborn baby, they thought. Wrong. That baby was sitting in the apartment playing Bach's chaconne on violin. My great-grandfather wrote me a letter in 1965, predicting the night my family would betray itself. And on Christmas Eve, 54 days after everything fell apart, I finally understood what inheritance really means. The criminal charges were filed, the conspirators arrested. The baby they tried to kill was playing Bach's chaconne on violin in a Brooklyn apartment. Justice served. But there was more. Sunday morning, November 2nd, 10:30 a.m. I returned to the Prescott estate in Greenwich, walked to my great-grandfather's reading room, the room Richard Alexander Whitmore I had used for 50 years before he died in 1972, opened the Mosler safe from 1957, the same safe I'd found my mother's invoice in 3 weeks earlier. Inside a sealed envelope, dated March 18th, 1965, my great-grandfather's handwriting, open when Prescott family betrayed by blood, not before that time. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside a document, trust agreement, Prescott Heritage Trust, created 1965, dormant for 60 years, activated only when the current CEO confirms betrayal from blood. My great-grandfather knew, 60 years ago. He knew one of us would destroy the family, and he left me this. The trust transferred my 51% controlling shares to a protected entity. Sterling lost everything, not just his position, his inheritance, all of it. First beneficiary Ronan Delaney, conditional on graduation from Juilliard or Curtis. Ronan graduated Juilliard 2018, qualified. My great-grandfather had written provisions for a biological son he'd never met, for a betrayal he'd predicted, for justice he knew would be needed. I activated the trust. Clarence arrived to witness. I lit a candle before the Renoir painting my great-grandfather had bought in 1947. Ancestral justice. 60 years waiting. Monday morning, November 3rd, 7 a.m. I drove to Trinity Church Cemetery in Manhattan, grave number 247. The fake tombstone, white granite, carved letters, Simone Delaney, 1971 to 1995. I'd visited 30 years. Every September 14th at 3:42 a.m., placed white magnolia flowers, mourned a lie. I stood there, looking at the stone. Then I raised my bare hands and smashed it. Bare fists on granite, again, 47 times. My fingers bled, blood on white granite, shards falling onto the magnolia flowers I'd just placed. Vernon stood 5 meters away, watching, didn't intervene. 47 times I smashed that tombstone, until my hands were bleeding, until the granite cracked, until the lie was shattered. I smashed that tombstone 47 times with bare hands. My fingers bled. I smiled, for the first time in 30 years. Spontaneous. Real. Liberation. Vernon offered his handkerchief, bandaged my hand. We sat on the wet grass for 47 minutes. Silence. Watching the sunrise. I'd buried her in my head for 30 years. In 47 minutes, I dug her up. She was waiting in Brooklyn. Didn't need a tombstone anymore. Needed to bring her home. Master, Vernon said quietly. She's waiting. Let's bring her home. December 24th, Christmas Eve, evening. 54 days after the Plaza Gala. Prescott Estate, great room. Fireplace crackling, snow falling heavy outside the Palladian windows. 12 people gathered. The Heritage Trust had been finalized December 15th. $1.2 billion seized from Sterling, transferred to Ronan. I'd filed for divorce from Celeste on November 2nd. Expected finalization, June 2026. Constance was under house arrest. Criminal charges pending. Ostracized, alone. Celeste in Bedford Hills. Detention awaiting trial. Colleen in detention. Flight risk after JFK arrest. The bodyguard sentenced to 8 years. Sterling had lost everything. Left the family. I didn't know where he was. Didn't ask. But on Christmas Eve, the people who mattered were here. Simone wore the half Cartier watch on her left wrist. The half she'd kept for 15 years in her drawer. I wore the other half on my right wrist, the half I'd worn for 30 years without knowing what it meant. Vernon had assembled them on Thanksgiving. 2 halves, finally reunited. Ronan held a 1748 Stradivarius violin, $4.7 million. I'd bought it for him the week after the gala. He played Bach, Chaconne in D minor, the same piece he'd been playing when the FBI arrested the conspirators. Vernon sat in an armchair. First time in 40 years of service. Drinking Macallan 30 year with me. Not serving. Just sitting. Family, not butler. Vivian was 9 months pregnant. Sterling's child. Due January 2026. I would be godfather. She'd chosen that. Forgiveness extending even to the child of the man who'd tried to destroy me. Barrett sat beside Hayes. Brothers reconciled. Both working at the company now, both part of the rebuilding. Clarence sat near the fire, COO, who'd stood with me when everything collapsed. The Bach finished, Ronan lowered the Stradivarius. Quiet. I looked at him, my son, 29 years old, the child I'd never known existed until 54 days ago. Do you want to call me father? I asked. Not now, when you're ready. Ronan put down the Stradivarius, walked over, hugged me, 30 seconds. Dad, he said, I'm ready. I held my son, the son stolen from me for 30 years, finally here, finally real. Vernon poured more Macallan into my glass, sat back in the armchair. He was no longer my butler, he was my family. I took Simone's hand, 54 years old, piano teacher, 30 years later, fingers trembling, nervous. Whispered, just for her. Simone, I'm not proposing to you. 30 years ago I got engaged with a lie. I won't repeat that mistake. I don't need another paper. Don't need a ceremony. Just need you to sit beside me every morning with coffee. That's the wedding I've waited 30 years for. Her eyes reddened, hand gripping mine. She nodded slowly. "I don't need paper anymore," she said. "Just need to sit beside you without fear. I've been afraid 30 years. We didn't kiss, just held hands, watching the fire. She wore half the Cartier watch on her left wrist for 15 years. I wore the other half on my right wrist for 30 years. Vernon assembled them on Thanksgiving. Two halves, 30 years separated, finally whole. That's what we were. Two people broken apart by lies, finally sitting together. No wedding needed, just coffee in the morning. Vernon poured more whiskey. Snow fell outside. Ronan's Stradivarius silent on the chair. Peace. Some inheritances are passed down, some are stolen, and some you walk back to claim even at 56. I didn't marry her. I didn't need to. After 30 years, I understand marriage isn't a piece of paper signed in a church. Marriage is the decision to stay each morning. And I've decided. And to you listening to my story about family betrayal, remember this. Sometimes the people you trust most are the ones capable of the deepest wounds. Don't make my mistake. For 30 years, I chose comfort over truth. I saw the invoice in my mother's safe and closed it. I heard warnings and dismissed them. I believed lies because accepting the truth would have shattered the perfect family I thought I had. I was 56 years old before I learned that loyalty to people who hurt you isn't loyalty. It's denial wearing a respectable mask. Family betrayal cuts deeper than any other wound because it comes from those who should protect you. My mother ordered violence. My wife participated. My son tried to destroy me. But here's what I learned. Family isn't defined by blood or names. It's defined by who stays when truth comes out. Vernon kept Simone alive 30 years, despite threats. Vivienne chose justice over marriage. Ronan forgave me for absence I didn't cause. I believe God put me through this to teach me one thing: real family chooses you every morning, not just on good days. If this story resonated with you, leave a comment telling me, have you ever experienced family betrayal? Sometimes hearing that you're not alone makes all the difference. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want more stories about truth, justice, and second chances, subscribe to Revenge Dad. Your support keeps these stories reaching people who need them. Thank you for staying until the very end. This story contains fictionalized elements created for storytelling and reflection. What matters is the lesson it carries, and I hope it stays with you.